Chapter 1563. Clang! A cold glint flashed in Chu Liyue's hand, and Scarlet Heaven's sword stabbed into the ice. A crack quickly spread out. Dumpling followed her worriedly, wanting to help. Chu Liyue shook her head lightly. She held Scarlet Heaven's sword tightly and slowly stood up. The other party was testing Dumpling and her. If she wanted to talk to the other party as equals, she had to overcome this. Otherwise, she wouldn't even be able to enter the other party's eyes, let alone talk about other things. She took a deep breath and looked forward. The sea was boundless. No one knew where the ice bridge led to or how long it would take. Chu Liyue pulled out Scarlet Heaven's sword and continued forward. With Scarlet Heaven's sword as a crutch, a crack would appear on the ice bridge with every step she took. However, no matter how the surrounding waves surged, the ice bridge remained as stable as before. Tuanzi was right behind her, following her step by step. Just like that, the man and the beast walked forward slowly and with great difficulty. That Shengguanyu is quite capable. If I'm not wrong, the sword in her hand seems to be the venerable one divine weapon mentioned before. In the Phoenix Shrine, Elder Yi Shang could not help but ask when he saw that the slender figure within the ball of light was still advancing forward. I heard that she has many treasures on her. Even the Heavenly Square Cauldron, one of the 10 great divine weapons, has recognized her as its master. Other things aside, she's quite wealthy. Although the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan didn't interact much with the outside world, it didn't mean that they were uninformed. On the contrary, they were often the first to know about many things in the Divine Ruins world. Elder Yi Shang rubbed his chin. It seems that the great Phoenix Dragon's corpse was hidden in there by her, so it was not discovered by that group of old things. Elder Yi, you couldn't help but laugh. Haha. It's funny talking about this. Shengguanyu used the 2 wing bones from the corpse to reconstruct the body of her contracted magical beast, the legendary 3-eyed eagle. Until now, the corpse is still incomplete, right? The 2 ancient divine beast clans had always been in a state of competition. Naturally, they couldn't help but laugh when they heard this news. Not only did she contract with a human, but she also worked with a mere legendary 3-eyed eagle. How embarrassing. What's so funny about this? Elder Yi Gong reprimanded with a cold face. Elder Yi Yu's laughter stopped abruptly, and he looked embarrassed. Legendary 3-eyed eagle's identity isn't ordinary. It seems to be an eagle master. Speaking of which, its status isn't low. In this world, she's the legendary Great Phoenix Dragon's corpse, Elder said Euyus. Elder Yi Shang had an indifferent expression. As he spoke, he even took a glance at Elder Yu. Although the 5 elders had similar status on the surface, the age gap between them wasn't small. Yu was the youngest of the 5th elders. Compared to the first elder Yi Gong, he was almost 700 years younger. In addition, he had a jumpy personality and sometimes spoke too bluntly. Elder Yu shrunk his neck. Actually, what he said was the truth. He didn't believe that these people wouldn't secretly laugh at him if they knew about this. Just this point alone was enough to scare people. After all, even their Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan wouldn't do this. Suddenly, he looked at the huge ball of light. His gaze froze, and he couldn't hide the surprise in his eyes. She seems to be coming over. Chu Liyue walked step by step very slowly. But she didn't stop. After an unknown period of time, she gradually realized that the surrounding waves had calmed down. And that heavy pressure suddenly disappeared at a certain moment. A bright golden light suddenly shone from the front. This light was a little dazzling. Chu Liyue subconsciously tilted her face and raised her hand to cover her eyes. After waiting for a while, she gradually adapted to the light and looked forward. A transparent barrier that was completely golden in color had unknowingly appeared from under the water. At this moment, it covered the surface of the sea and was only a few steps away from her. The barrier was semicircular. At a glance, it looked like a huge dome that covered the entire sea. Although it was transparent, she couldn't see anything inside. She could only vaguely see layers of shadows that were like undulating mountains. In front of her, above the barrier, several streams of light flickered and formed a flame pattern. Chu Liu's heart trembled. That's Phoenix God Mountain. Just come in directly. That vicissitude and distant voice finally sounded again. Compared to before, this voice sounded much closer, as if it was right next to her ear. Chu Liu pursed her lips. This barrier obviously wasn't that easy to enter. But since the other party had made such a request, she could only do as he said. Chu Liu's gaze was fixed on the barrier. At a glance, there was nothing special about it. Even the power of suppression had quietly disappeared. It was as if she could easily step in by lifting her foot. However, just as she was about to step forward, Dumpling suddenly rushed over. It directly blocked in front of Chu Liu and stared at the barrier vigilantly. It was as if there was something terrifying and hostile on it. Chu Liu's brows twitched slightly. Dumpling would only reveal this state when it was extremely dangerous. Dumpling. Chu Liu called out to it. Dumpling turned around and shook its head frantically. Obviously, it didn't want her to take the risk. She smiled and gently patted Dumpling's wings. Then let's go in together. Since they were already here, they couldn't just go back. Dumpling hesitated for a long time before finally taking half a step back hesitantly. Chu Liu looked at the barrier again. In the next moment, her expression froze as she raised her hand and reached forward. Just as her slender fingers touched the barrier, Chu Liu suddenly heard a roar. Immediately after, it was as if an extremely sharp blade had sliced through her fingertips. Her heart skipped a beat. She almost subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand. However, just as her wrist moved, she thought of Dumpling beside her. She had to go in. Chu Liu calmed down and gritted her teeth as she continued forward. An intense pain quickly came from her palm. From the outside, she had only reached her hand into the transparent reddish-gold barrier. Everything was calm. But in reality, she was suffering an indescribable and terrifying pain. Chu Liu's hand began to tremble uncontrollably. She almost suspected that if she passed through this barrier, her entire body would be crushed into powder. At this moment, Dumpling had already entered more than half of its body. Sensing that something was wrong with Chu Liu, it turned around and saw Chu Liu's painful expression. It was shocked and angry as it flapped its wings on the barrier. In the next moment, the barrier rippled like water and quietly opened. Dumpling took the opportunity to bite Chu Liu's sleeve and pulled her in. At the same time, the expressions of several people in the Phoenix Shrine changed. It opened the barrier. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1564. The one who shouted was Elder Yi Gong. Although the other elders didn't say anything, their faces were all filled with shock. Even Yi Zhao's eyes suddenly became deep and unfathomable. They couldn't be blamed for having such a big reaction. It was just that this scene was too shocking. One had to know that the barrier had been in place since the birth of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Only people with the clan's bloodline could pass through the barrier safely. Without permission, outsiders would have to go through the painful torture of being skinned and tendons pulled out if they wanted to enter. It was extremely difficult. This was why Chu Liu was in so much pain when she wanted to enter just now. This was an obstacle that they had purposely set up. This move wouldn't take her life, and it wouldn't even leave any scars on her body. However, the pain was incomparably real, and ordinary people wouldn't be able to bear it. It was also another form of punishment. However, they didn't expect that just as Chu Luiyue extended half of her hand, Dumpling directly opened the barrier from inside and forcefully dragged her in. In the academy, only the clan leader and the 5 elders could open the barrier on their own. Now that Dumpling opened the barrier without saying anything, how could they not be shocked? After a long while, Yi Zhao slowly spoke. A crimson gold sky phoenix with the purest bloodline power can also open the barrier. His voice was very calm, but it was no different from a sudden clap of thunder in their ears. The purest bloodline power. A crimson gold sky phoenix that broke through from a 9-colored heavenly pheasant? How is this possible? Even Elder EU, who thought highly of Chu Luiyue previously, was dumbfounded. He knew that this girl wasn't simple. She could hide the great phoenix dragon's corpse, use its wing bone to reconstruct the body of her contracted fiend beast, and even retreat unscathed from Mao Yao's attack. How could someone who could do these things be an ordinary person? That crimson gold sky phoenix had been following her all along, and its potential and talent should be quite good. However, he never expected that this crimson gold sky phoenix would open the barrier as soon as it arrived. The entire Phoenix Shrine fell into a deathly silence. Because other than this explanation, they couldn't find a second possibility. After a while, Elder Yi Shang spoke with a serious expression. There hasn't been a single person with the purest bloodline power in the clan in 1,000 years. If this is the real one, then, it's a great fortune for our clan. Impossible. Some sharp retorts were heard. Elder Yi Gong's expression was extremely ugly. He knew all too well what the purest bloodline power meant. It's only a 9-colored heavenly pheasant. It's already extremely lucky to be able to break through and become a crimson gold heavenly phoenix. How can he possess the purest bloodline power? There were so many geniuses in the clan, but even Yi Ran, who was the most outstanding in recent years, had not reached this level. How could it be possible for a lowly existence from the outside world? This was the biggest joke in the world. Yi Zhao narrowed his eyes slightly. The depth of his eyes was unfathomable. Whether it is or not, we will know when it comes. Chu Luiyue only saw a golden light flash before his eyes, and then a vast expanse of white. After a while, she gradually saw the scene in front of her clearly. What came toward her was a furry head. There was also a pair of big round eyes. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Dumpling. She suddenly thought of something and turned her head to look. A crimson gold barrier was flickering quietly behind them. It came in. Chu Luiyue opened her mouth. Dumpling, you dragged me in just now. Dumpling nodded happily. Chu Luiyue raised her hand stiffly and muttered in disbelief. This barrier. You opened it. Dumpling blinked. Of course, it was her. Who else could it be? Seeing that Chu Luiyue seemed to be in disbelief, Dumpling raised its wings and waved gently. Pest. An extremely soft sound was heard. In the next moment, Chu Luiyue saw that the golden barrier had indeed cracked open from the middle. Looking out from the crack, she could see the flickering ice bridge and the blue sea surface. Chu Luiyue's breathing stagnated, and her mind went blank for a moment. Even though she had always been unparalleled in intelligence, when she saw this scene, she was also stunned for a moment. Could it be? This barrier can be controlled by the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan at will. But this seems a little too casual. Whoosh. Dumpling waved its wings again. The barrier quickly returned to its original state. The golden light was shining, clear and clear. It was exactly the same as what she saw at the beginning. Chu Luiyue looked at Dumpling suspiciously. Dumpling also tilted her head and looked at it. Is it fun? This thing doesn't seem as scary as I imagined. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment. Try again. Can you still open it? He Hearing this, Dumpling immediately did as she was told. With a light flap of its wings, another crack immediately appeared on the barrier. Dumpling rolled its eyes, and the barrier began to return to its original state. Then, it moved again, and a second crack appeared next to it. With its movements, the barrier opened and closed, and a stream of light overflowed. Dumpling looked at Chu Luyue happily and stretched its head forward. Is it beautiful? I want to be caressed. Chu Luyue took a deep breath, stretched out her hand stiffly, and gently patted Dumpling. After thinking for a moment, she praised from the bottom of her heart, Dumpling, you're really amazing. Dumpling narrowed its eyes in satisfaction. At the same time, in the Phoenix Shrine, the faces of several people turned green. Digression, continue at 6 p.m. Today is the last day. Everyone, please remember to vote in time. Monthly votes and stars of recommendation tickets will also be verified as soon as possible. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1565. If it was said that the first time Dumpling opened the barrier, it could be said that it was a coincidence. But now, seeing this scene, the few people in the hall couldn't say that no matter what. If even this couldn't be considered as the purest bloodline power, Elder EU tried to calm himself down, but he still couldn't suppress it after trying a few times. He gasped. This bloodline power is definitely at the top of the younger generation, isn't it? His voice wasn't loud, but the others heard it clearly. Hearing this, they all had complicated expressions. Not just the younger generation. Even the few of them might not be able to control the barrier so easily and freely. This Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix was obviously still very young, but it had such ability. Other than the word talent, they couldn't think of any other words to describe it. This is simply nonsense. What does it think the barrier of the clan is? How dare it play such a trick? How disrespectful. Elder Igong choked for a long time and finally found a reprimand with great difficulty. The others looked at each other. Play a trick. That's because it has the ability. They also wanted to do that, but they didn't have the talent. As for the so-called disrespect, that Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix probably didn't know what the barrier meant. It just treated it as an interesting toy. How was it disrespectful? After Elder Igong said that sentence, he actually regretted it in his heart. If it were other people, it would be fine. But at this time, standing in the hall were the few people with the most noble status in the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. No one knew better than them what everything that happened just now meant. The two sentences he said were actually a little ridiculous. But he was too anxious. The ancestral worship ceremony was imminent. He had already prepared everything for Iran. When the time came, he would smoothly take the position. But at this time, such a talented Qing Yao Jin suddenly appeared out of nowhere. There were too many variables. How could he not be worried? If it was an ordinary one with talent, it would be fine. But this one clearly had the purest bloodline power that only appeared once in 1,000 years. This was an absolute suppression. If it wasn't handled well, all his efforts in the past years would be in vain. Elder Yishang suddenly raised his eyelids, glanced at him, and said with a faint smile. Fortunately, I didn't kill them directly at the beginning. The purest bloodline was extremely precious. It would be a great loss to our Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Elder Igong's expression turned even uglier. Unfortunately, these were all true, and he didn't even have the right to refute. Looks like he's a good seedling. After a long period of silence, Yishao finally spoke. He stood at the very front with his back facing them, so no one could see the expression on his face. She couldn't tell anything from his voice and emphasis. Although it had formed a contract with a human before, this bloodline is hard to come by. When it breaks the contract with that human, I'll just have to teach it properly." With that, he waved his sleeve. The huge ball of light quietly transformed into several streams of light and disappeared. Tuanzi was beside the enchantment, having a lot of fun. Before coming in, it had an intuition that the barrier was very dangerous, so it didn't want Chu Liyue to take the risk. However, he didn't expect it to enter so easily. Moreover, after entering, the barrier seemed to have undergone a subtle change. The feeling of danger disappeared and was replaced by an indescribable sense of intimacy. Not only was it not worried, but it also became more and more addicted to playing. Chu Liyue watched from the side and rubbed the space between her eyebrows. Although she didn't know the exact situation, but as the barrier to enter and exit the Divine Phoenix Mountain, it was obvious that it couldn't be opened and closed so easily. The other party had asked them to come over this time with the intention of reprimanding and testing them. Obviously, they wouldn't joke about such a thing. Then, there was only one possibility left. Dumpling was indeed extraordinary. She had never thought of this before. After all, she didn't expect Dumpling to be able to break through from a 9-colored heavenly pheasant to a crimson gold sky phoenix. Now that she saw this scene, she felt even more confident. She looked up ahead. This was a huge space enveloped by a crimson gold barrier. At a glance, it was boundless. Mountain ranges overlapped one another, and the mountains stretched on endlessly, lush and verdant. Thick ancient trees stood in a forest. Each of them seemed to have an extremely long history, and it would take several people to wrap their arms around them. The canopy overturned the sky, and the branches and leaves were lush. The energy of heaven and earth was rich. As long as one took a deep breath, they would feel relaxed and happy. It was a scene full of vitality. Only the tallest mountain in the middle had no flowers or trees. It was completely charred black, as if it had been burned by flames. The moment Chu Liyue saw that mountain, she immediately sensed that it must be the real destination of this trip. She narrowed her eyes slightly and looked at the top. A majestic palace stood on top of it. Even from such a distance, she could still feel its solemn atmosphere. The moment she looked over, there seemed to be a gaze from afar from the hall and landed on her with incomparable precision. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. She subconsciously became vigilant. All the muscles in her body tensed up. Dumpling seemed to have sensed something as well. She moved closer to her and looked over. In the next moment, the ground under Chu Liyue's feet suddenly shook. She lowered her head to take a look. Before she could react, she immediately felt that the world was spinning. Then, her entire body seemed to be pulled hard by some force. Her surroundings were suddenly plunged into darkness. Fortunately, this feeling did not last for too long. After a while, Chu Liyue felt that her feet were on solid ground. The darkness in front of her quickly disappeared. She narrowed her eyes. Before she could see the surroundings clearly, her body was already wrapped in a layer of cold air. She calmed herself down and immediately looked around. This was a hall. It was magnificent, simple, and solemn. The ground under her feet was covered with clean and smooth black jade stones, which clearly reflected her figure. There were scattered spots of pure gold light, like stars in the sky, bright and dazzling. She was stunned for a moment and looked up slightly. Above her was a huge original dome. It was carved out of a whole piece of clear white jade stone. There were countless stars drawn on it, shining brightly. The stars on the ground were actually reflections of the dome. Standing here, it was really easy to get a sense of illusion. However, Chu Liyue did not put too much thought into it. She quickly retracted her gaze and looked straight ahead. In the hall, there were 6 people on the steps, looking down at her from above. The person in front was an old man in a white robe. He had a square face, and he was majestic without being angry. The most eye-catching thing was that his hair was pure gold. Almost instantly, Chu Luiyue reacted to the situation. This person must be the clan leader of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1566. When Chu Luiyue looked at Yi Zhao was also sizing her up. His eyes were very indifferent, but they were very penetrating. With a clear glance, Chu Luiyue felt as if she was about to be completely seen through. However, Yi Zhao's gaze didn't stay on her for too long. After a few glances, he turned to look at Tuanzi, who was beside him. It was only now that a faint ripple appeared in his bottomless eyes. A mere human wasn't worth his time. This Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix was the most important thing to them. You still haven't transformed into a human form. He spoke in a deep voice. His voice was as deep as a bell, but it also carried a sense of vastness and distance. Chu Luiyue was shocked. As expected of the clan leader of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. This kind of pressure was indeed something she had never seen before in her life. Even Mao Yao, who she had seen before, couldn't be compared to him. Dumpling knew that he was asking her, but she didn't want to answer. The way he looked at her master just now was as if he was looking at an object, which really made her angry. Dumpling ignored him and lowered her head to rub Chu Luiyue's face, looking as if she didn't want to talk. The atmosphere was cold and silent. The clan leader is asking you a question. What kind of attitude is this? The anger in Elder Yi Gong's heart rose again, and he directly spoke in a cold voice. Dumpling glanced at him and then retracted her gaze, still very uncooperative. In fact, after breaking through to become a Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix, she automatically gained a part of the relevant memories. From then on, she knew that she should come back. It was just that there were too many troubles in between, so she didn't have the time. But in her heart, she didn't forget this matter. In fact, it had been filled with anticipation and curiosity for a long time before this. Unfortunately, the other party's recent series of actions directly made her lose all her good impression of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Anyone who made things difficult for her master wasn't a good person. She didn't want to go back to this kind of place. Chu Luiyue gently rubbed Dumpling's head to calm her down, then took half a step forward and bowed respectfully to the few people. Shengguan Yu greets seniors. It didn't matter that they didn't take her seriously. She came this time to solve Dumpling's problem, so naturally, she had to bring 120% sincerity. Anyway, it wasn't the first time someone had looked down on her, so it didn't matter. Dumpling broke through to become a Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix, so she hasn't transformed to human form yet. Chu Luiyue had specially asked Tuanzi about this before. Only when one's strength and age reached a certain level would it be able to successfully transform into a human form. As now, she could only appear in her true form. Yi Gong knitted his brows and looked at Chu Luiyue with a knife-like gaze. Did he ask you? This is to S2's, yup. Chu Luiyue's lips curled up slightly, as if she didn't mind the other party's words. Only her black jade-like eyes were clear and clean, glowing with a clear light, firm and persistent. Dumpling is my contracted divine beast. Our minds are connected. Since she doesn't want to speak, why can't I speak on her behalf? These words sounded like blatant flaunting to the people on the other side. Contracted divine beast. Was she worthy? Elder Yu was about to say something when he saw Yi Zhao raise his hand. Only then did he swallow the rest of his words. Only the gaze he used to look at Chu Luiyue was still very unfriendly. Yi Zhao's expression was indifferent. Her voice was calm, but it carried a noble and tyrannical aura that made people not dare to disobey. I don't want to hear these words a second time. Phoenix God Mountain is my race's land. Human race has never been allowed to enter as they wish. I let you in today to hear your apology, and to let you break the contract with it. Yi Zhao lifted her chin slightly. Originally, you wanted to leave half of your life here, but, seeing that it has followed you for so many years, I won't pursue this crime. As long as you complete these two things, you can leave safely. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly after hearing this. On the other hand, Dumpling's emotions suddenly became agitated. She glared angrily at Yi Zhao. Not breaking the contract. Definitely not. It had become strong with great difficulty and could stay by her side to protect her. How could it leave just like that? Yi Zhao's expression finally became serious. She looked at Dumpling with dignity. Don't forget, you are a crimson gold heavenly phoenix. Don't tell me you want to fight against your own race for her. Following a human around and trying to curry favor with her, what kind of appearance was that? Boom! Dumpling's body suddenly burned with golden flames. So what if she was a crimson gold heavenly phoenix? These so-called race members had nothing to do with her. Why should she break the contract with her master for them? When she was injured, Chu Luiyue was the one who helped her heal. When she was on the verge of death, Chu Luiyue was the one who helped her block the heavenly tribulation. She gave her life, so she should follow her in life and death. Never betray her. Rebel. Really rebel. Elder Yi Gong sneered and pointed at Dumpling. Clan leader, you saw it. Now, she wants to go against our entire race for this human. Such a rebellious bloodline is really unacceptable. If she let it stay, wouldn't she be burying an unpredictable bomb for herself? Dumpling. Chu Luiyue patted her wings gently. That's your clan leader and elder. Don't be so rude. Dumpling stared at her with wide eyes. Could it be that she was also on their side? She didn't want it anymore. Sensing Dumpling's thoughts, Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh. Her voice was gentle but exceptionally firm. Don't worry, I brought you here and will definitely bring you back. As she spoke, she looked up at Yi Zhao and said word by word, this time, I actually have two things to do. First, I have to visit you and apologize. Dumpling did suffer a lot when she was with me previously. I feel guilty, so I naturally have to come and apologize to you. Second, let Dumpling return to the clan and get the identity she deserves. Then, continue to follow me home. No matter what, I won't break the contract with Dumpling. Even if you personally stop me, I, Shangguan Yu, will not change this decision. Digression, the maximum number of monthly votes is now 27. Dear fans of the recommendation tickets, come and verify it. Mobile users can browse and read at 12:00 tomorrow. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1567. After Chu Luiyue spoke, the Phoenix Shrine fell into a short silence. Everyone, including Yi Zhao, started to look at her in a different light. They didn't expect this slender woman, who looked less than 20 years old, to have such courage. Do you know what you're saying? After pausing for a moment, Yi Zhao narrowed his eyes and said indifferently. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up slightly. Of course. I came here with full sincerity. I know that the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan has never made a contract with humans, but when Dumpling made a contract with me, it was still a 9-colored heavenly pheasant. This way, it's not against the clan rules, but now that it's a Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix, it has to follow the rules here. Yi Zhao interrupted Chu Luiyue with a cold expression and dark waves in his eyes. Shangguan Yu, I thought you were a smart person. As soon as he said that, an oppressive aura suddenly descended in the hall. Chu Luiyue felt a weight on her shoulders, as if a mountain was pressing down on her. She straightened her back and raised her chin slightly, as if she didn't hear the other party's threat. Or maybe, she understood but didn't want to care. Dumpling and I have a deep bond. If we break the contract now, it will definitely hurt it, that's not something you need to worry about. Yi Zhao's patience was about to run out. Letting Sheng Wanyu enter the Phoenix Shrine and letting her live was already the biggest concession he could give. But now, she actually dared to think about continuing the contract openly. In his opinion, it was simply wishful thinking. Dumpling had a rare bloodline power. The effect of breaking the contract was almost negligible. With such talent and potential, there was no need to worry about those problems. I'll ask you one last chance. Take back all your words. This was for Dumpling's sake. If it was anyone else, he would have already chased them out. Chu Luyue didn't show any fear or panic on her face. Instead, she took a step forward with a determined expression. Clan leader Yi Zhao, I've already made my purpose of coming here today very clear. I know that this is something difficult for you and the entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan to accept. But this contract is ultimately between Dumpling and me, isn't it? Yi Zhao's eyes turned cold. He really didn't expect that a human exalted god would dare to be so arrogant in front of him. Boom! Suddenly, a crimson gold flame burned in his deep eyes. The space around Chu Luyue suddenly locked her in place and crazily twisted. Her chest, there was a the smell of blood instantly. In the blink of an eye, it was as if countless ropes had trapped her and were tightening around her. Every inch of her flesh felt like it was being torn apart. She clenched her hands into fists. She wanted to break free, but she found that she couldn't move at all. At this moment, she was like a fish on a chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Yi Zhao was the clan leader of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. He didn't even take human exalted gods seriously. Wasn't it a piece of cake for him to deal with Chu Luyue? He didn't even need to do anything. Just one look was enough to take Chu Luyue's life. Chu Luyue's face quickly turned pale. Blood seeped out of the corner of her mouth. There was a terrifying force that kept forcing her to kneel. Her legs started to tremble. Gradually, her entire body started to tremble uncontrollably. Dumpling suddenly rushed over. She flapped her wings. A crimson golden flame suddenly streaked across the sky. Chu Luyue vaguely heard a slight cracking sound. In the next moment, she suddenly felt the power around her relax a little. She looked up. Dumpling was standing in front of her. Her body was burning with flames, and she was looking at Yi Zhao with fighting spirit. That pair of clear and pure eyes had already been dyed with a trace of scarlet at this moment. Yi Zhao was shocked. Dumpling could actually break his attack. Although she couldn't completely block it, it was already very rare for her to be able to do so. One had to know that she had just broken through to the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix realm a few months ago. The expressions of the elders behind him also changed slightly. Although they had already confirmed that Dumpling was of the purest bloodline, the talent and strength she displayed every time shocked them. It had been too long since a purest bloodline appeared in the clan. Even they hadn't seen it with their own eyes. They had only glimpsed a little from the clan's history. Now, it seemed that the purest bloodline was even more shocking than they had expected. At this moment, Chu Luyue finally had the chance to speak. Dumpling, come back. Dumpling didn't move. Chu Luyue raised her eyebrows. Sensing her reaction, Dumpling reluctantly turned around. Almost in the blink of an eye, the fierce fighting spirit in her eyes quickly faded, and it was replaced by grievance. They bullied her. So what if she attacked? At most, she could just leave. Dumpling felt wronged and blamed herself. If it wasn't for her, why would she have to suffer and be humiliated like this here? Chu Luyue smiled slightly and patted her shoulder lightly. This time, she brought Dumpling back to let Dumpling acknowledge her ancestors, not to let her break off relations with the clan. She could see that although the other party wasn't very polite to her, she did think highly of Dumpling. Otherwise, she wouldn't even be able to enter this hall. She didn't care what they thought of her, but she didn't want Dumpling to be lonely forever. She knew that she had the bloodline of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Deep in her bones, she still wanted to come back. Be good. Chu Luiyue urged her again. Dumpling hesitated for a moment before turning back into a small one. It flew back to her shoulder and nestled its head in her armpit. Chu Luiyue rubbed its head and looked up at Yi Zhao and the others again. As expected, the expressions of those people were very interesting. Dumpling has been spoiled by me since it was young. Its temper is very bad. Seniors, please don't be calculative with it. Chu Luiyue's words were very natural. However, Yi Zhao and the others felt stifled in their hearts. It was clearly the bloodline of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Why did she say that they were outsiders and that Shang Wanyu was the closest existence to it? Of course, judging from Dumpling's series of reactions, this was indeed the case. Actually, I really didn't have any other thoughts this time. Unfortunately, the seniors don't seem to trust me very much. Chu Luiyue's face showed a trace of regret. Clan leader Yi Zhao. I believe you can see that Dumpling and I have depended on each other for many years. It is impossible for us to be separated. If you really insist on breaking the contract between us, then, you can just kill me. She smiled and took a step forward. It's up to you to kill or torture. Yi Zhao coldly rebuked, how dare you threaten me? If he killed her, Dumpling, as a contracted mythological beast, would definitely not be able to live. Chu Luiyue chuckled and nodded. There was a hint of roguishness in her eyes. Yes. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1568. So what if I'm threatening you? The reason why she dared to come alone and negotiate with them about Dumpling's fate was because she had this trump card. Dumpling was her contracted mythological beast. If she died, Dumpling would also die. The other party was powerful and superior. She could only rely on herself. For this, she was willing to bet her life. To be honest, Dumpling and I have known each other since we were young. We've gone through life and death together countless times. We've long been family. If it can't continue to be with me in the future, I'll definitely be very sad. Chu Luiyue touched Dumpling with a sad expression. At that time, maybe one day it'll be too sad and directly die. When Dumpling heard this, it immediately raised its head and crazily rubbed against her face. If she died, it wouldn't live either. You. Yi Zhao finally couldn't hold back and pointed at Chu Luiyue. Because of anger, his fingers were trembling. How dare you? She actually dared to threaten with death. Wasn't this acting like a hooligan? This woman was so shameless. Yi Zhao had lived for thousands of years and had always been expressionless. At this time, he was about to go crazy from anger because of Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue bowed slightly and said modestly, "You're too polite." Anyway, she came today to openly let Dumpling continue to follow her. Not agree. Then she could only show her trump card and fight to the death. At first, she wanted to talk nicely, but the other party didn't give her a chance. Then she didn't have to give them face anymore. She had nothing to lose. She only had this one life left as a bargaining chip, so she might as well just lay it out on the table. In fact, there was another important reason why Chu Luiyue dared to do this. She was sure that the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan valued Dumpling very much and wouldn't be willing to let it die. Ever since she received the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan's letter, she vaguely felt that something was wrong. After coming here, she finally understood where that strange feeling came from. With the strength of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, they wouldn't take her seriously at all. In their eyes, a Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix that had already contracted with a human should also have a stain. Even if they were of the same race, they wouldn't particularly care about it. Instead, they would be full of disgust. But they actually wrote a letter to Nan Suhai, asking her to personally apologize and terminate the contract with Dumpling. Although that letter seemed to be high and mighty, Chu Luiyuan knew that the fact that they were willing to write this letter in itself already explained too many things. The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan wanted Dumpling to return. After arriving here and seeing that Tuanzi had opened the enchantment of the Divine Phoenix Mountain so easily, she felt even more confident. She had already said such harsh words, but they still didn't directly kill it. Wasn't it because of Dumpling? So, even if they hated her to the core, they would definitely not take her life. Sheng Wanyu. You've gone too far. Elder Yigong couldn't help but growl. He had never seen someone so arrogant in front of them. Chu Luiyue raised her brows slightly. I've already said what I should say. Instead of scolding and reprimanding me here, why don't you seriously consider my suggestion just now? She had already done it, so why would she be afraid of others talking about it? Yigong's chest choked, and his face turned red and white. Chu Luiyue couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. She turned her gaze slightly and looked at Yi Zhao. This was the one who had the most right to speak. With a gentle smile, she added, "Oh. Clan leader Yi Zhao, if you don't remember what I said just now, I can repeat it for you." Yi Zhao's eyelids twitched violently. Enough. I'm not that old and dim-sighted. Chu Luiyue obediently kept quiet, and patted Dumpling's butt twice to comfort her. TSK, Dumpling was scared out of her wits. The hall was cold and silent. Both sides were in a stalemate. After a long while, Chu Luiyue tucked her loose hair behind her ear and smiled. Clan leader Yi Zhao, can we renegotiate now? Time passed slowly. The people gathered outside the Phoenix Temple gradually became restless. That Sheng Wanyu has been in there for a long time, right? Why hasn't there been any movement until now? They were outside and couldn't see what was going on inside. However, when Chu Luiyue passed through the barrier and was directly brought into the Phoenix Temple, the heaven and earth energy within the Phoenix Temple fluctuated. Therefore, although they didn't see anyone or that crimson gold heavenly phoenix, they knew that they were already here. Yes. Didn't you say that you just want that woman to come over and apologize, and then cancel the contract? This shouldn't take long, right? It's hard to say. Who knows how long it will take to cancel the contract? We don't have much experience in this in the past, right? With the clan leader and a few elders here, it shouldn't be too difficult. Is there something else? Or is it that Sheng Wanyu doesn't agree? TSK. So what if she doesn't agree? Don't tell me that he can really stir up some waves. I heard that Sheng Wanyu is quite capable. Previously, Great Phoenix Dragon Clan's Mao Yao chased her all the way to Lingxiao College, but he was defeated in the end. I reckon that this woman really does have some skills. Mao Yao was too arrogant and didn't check it out, so he suffered a loss. How can the clan leader and elders be the same as him? Besides, that Sheng Wanyu is now in our Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan's territory. How could a mere human exalted god like her do whatever she wanted in such a huge Phoenix mountain? But I heard that the new Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix's bloodline power seems to be quite good. Otherwise, the clan leader wouldn't be willing to spend so much effort to summon it back. That's true. The ancestral worship ceremony is near, and the clan leader is doing this now. Could it be that there's a deeper meaning? Isn't it a little too early to say that? It hasn't been officially tested for talent yet, right? Anyway, everything will be clear when the ancestral worship ceremony arrives. At the side, Yi Ran frowned when he heard that. He lifted his gaze slightly and looked at the Phoenix Temple. It was just a lowly existence that broke through from the nine-colored heavenly pheasant. Why would the clan leader and elders spend so much effort on it? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1569. The atmosphere in the Phoenix Temple became even colder. Yi Zhao stared coldly at Chu Luyue and laughed out of anger. Humans are indeed treacherous and cunning. For thousands of years, it had always been hard to change one's nature. Chu Luyue didn't care about such words at all. If she didn't have some tricks up her sleeve, she would have recognized her long ago. How could she still stand here and talk? So she took it as a compliment for her intelligence. So, she said with a smile, "You flatter me. Actually, I'm doing this so that Dumpling can continue to be with me. I know this is hard for you and the entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan to accept. So, as long as you're willing to agree not to let us terminate the contract and let Dumpling return to the clan to acknowledge her ancestors, then this junior will definitely go through fire and water to fulfill your request." Chu Liyue's words were very sincere. This was the main purpose of her trip. Yi Zhao stared at her for a long time and sneered. "If you really want its good, you should terminate the contract automatically. It's a Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix, a noble and powerful ancient divine beast. Do you know that you'll be its biggest burden?" The strength of a contracted magical beast was closely related to its master. If the master was a good-for-nothing, then even an ancient divine beast's combat strength would be greatly limited. The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan's average lifespan is thousands of years. If the bloodline power is rich and pure, it's even more unpredictable. However, humans, even the high gods, can only live for a few hundred years. When you die, don't tell me you wanted to die with you. Yi Zhao looked at Chu Luyue with undisguised sarcasm. You say it's for its good, but in fact, it's just for your own selfish desires. Every word was like a heavy stone falling down. It was so oppressive that it was hard to breathe. After hearing this, the smile on Chu Liyue's face gradually disappeared. She narrowed her eyes slightly, then raised her head and asked, "How can you be sure that I will only be a burden to Dumpling?" It was as if a thin layer of frost had covered the woman's elegant and refined face. She emitted a chilling aura that caused one's heart to tremble. "It seems that you still don't know me well. In that case, let me formally introduce myself to you. I am Sheng Wanyu, the disciple of Nan Su Huai, the dean of Lingshao College, the descendant of venerable artificer Sheng Wanjing, and the consort of Yuntian Tower. Of course, I know that these identities are not worthy of your attention, but you should know what it means to have such a background." Chu Liyue's eyes were tinged with coldness and arrogance. That was the pride in his bones, and also the confidence that came from his own strength. "I just became a high god. At the same time, I am already a Xian King teacher and a doctor. Oh right, other than that, I'm also a weapon refiner. The Scarlet Heaven Sword Soul was personally refined and fused by me." Her tone was calm, and her voice was as clear as jade. At this point, she suddenly smiled. "Most importantly, I am only 17 years old now. Do you really think that I will remain at this level for the rest of my life?" Yi Zhao was momentarily speechless and did not know how to refute. Even if he looked down on the human race, he knew that based on what Sheng Wanyu had said, she was definitely one of the best among the human race. After a moment, he finally spoke in a deep voice. "All right. Since you are so confident in yourself, then I will give you a chance." Digression, 6:00 in the afternoon. Please verify the star of the monthly votes as soon as possible. Currently, the highest number of votes is 27, and the highest number of votes is 196. It will end soon. In addition, there is a big lazy building event in the comments section today. It has already been placed at the top. Good luck to everyone. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1570. Yi Zhao raised his hand and pointed at Dumpling. As long as you can help it transform into a human form within a month, our clan will not pursue this matter any further. From then on, it will follow you to its death. The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan will no longer interfere. A deep and resounding voice reverberated throughout the entire Phoenix Shrine. The elders were shocked and looked at Yi Zhao in disbelief. Could it be that the patriarch had gone mad? He actually agreed to Sheng Guanyu's request and made such a bet with her. However, Chu Lue smiled and enunciated every word clearly. All right. It's a deal. Creak, the door of the Phoenix Shrine opened slowly. Countless people who were waiting outside perked up and looked up. A tall and burly figure walked out of the shrine slowly. He looked solemn and dignified. It was the clan leader, Yi Zhao. Behind him, the 5 elders walked out one after another. They were expressionless and indifferent. This disappointed those who wanted to pry a little from their expressions. Even Elder Yu, who was usually carefree, was frowning. The emotions in his eyes were unfathomable. Yi Zhao stood in the square in front of the shrine and looked down. His eyes were as dignified as lightning, which made people respect him unconsciously. The crowd, which was still a little noisy, suddenly quieted down. Then, they bowed together. Greetings, clan leader. Yi Zhao nodded and looked behind him. Come out. Hearing this, everyone had a blank expression as they looked at each other. The 5 elders were all here. Who was the clan leader calling? Suddenly, someone reacted and couldn't help but widen his eyes slightly. Sheng Guanyu. Or is it that Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix? It should be that newcomer, right? As for that Yu, the clan leader has always hated interacting with them. He already gave her face by not chasing her back. Why would he let her appear here? That's true. By the way, don't you think it's strange? He said that he was going to cancel the contract, but why wasn't there any movement inside? Although that fellow had broken through halfway, she was now considered a Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix. Logically speaking, she shouldn't be so calm, right? With the Patriarch and several elders around, even if there is a huge commotion, they will be able to suppress it. What's so strange about that? Low murmurs of discussion spread through the crowd. Countless pairs of eyes looked curiously at the entrance of the Phoenix Shrine. There were also some who couldn't help but stick their heads out and look forward with all their might, afraid that they would miss something. A slender and exquisite figure slowly walked out from behind the heavy and solemn door. It was evening. The brilliant afterglow shone on her body, elongating her silhouette, as if dispelling the cold air from the hall. It was a woman. She was wearing a simple and neat red dress with a black jade belt around her waist, which easily outlined her graceful curves. The lines on his body were tall and straight, each appropriate. Her fine black hair was tied up in a simple bun with a black peach blossom hairpin. Under the sunlight, the lifelike peach blossoms were sparkling with ice and snow. In an instant, the clamor from before disappeared. The air seemed to have frozen, and the scene froze. Everyone's expression froze for a moment, as if they hadn't reacted yet. As if sensing these gazes, the woman raised her head. Her neck was exceptionally slender and fair. At this moment, all her hair was tied up, revealing an unbelievably beautiful neckline. Her skin was translucent and fair, like the best mutton fat jade. At this moment, under the sunlight, one could even see the fine hair on her cheeks that glowed with a faint golden light. Her facial features were perfect, and she was extremely beautiful. Her red lips curled up slightly, and her originally cold eyes seemed to be tainted with a warm smile. Everyone was stunned for a moment. After a while, a murmur was heard. That's a human. Wait. That woman is Sheng Guanyu. Although they also looked like humans on the outside, it was just an illusion. Their aura was undoubtedly that of a crimson gold heavenly phoenix. But this woman who walked out of the phoenix shrine was clearly a human. There's actually a human who walked out of there alive. Someone couldn't help but exclaim. They couldn't be blamed for being so shocked. For so many years, the number of humans who came to Phoenix Shrine Mountain could be counted on one hand. Almost none of them were qualified to enter the Phoenix Shrine. But now, not only did this Shang Wanyu enter, but she also came out unscathed. How could this not be shocking? After all, many people in the clan thought that after the contract was broken, even if the clan leader and the others didn't take her life on the spot, she wouldn't live for long. Signing a contract with the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan was a great humiliation to them. I heard that this Shang Wanyu's status in the human race isn't low. The clan leader probably wants to keep her alive so that other humans won't come and bother her, right? Everyone made their own guesses. At the same time, they carefully sized up Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue chose to ignore all these gazes. She walked out of the room with an open mind. Dumpling was squatting on her shoulder, but it buried its head under its wings. It wanted to express its dissatisfaction with the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh. She coaxed, "Dumpling, they're all looking at you. If you keep acting like this, they might think that you're too timid." Swoosh! Dumpling was suddenly energized. It immediately raised its head, and its black eyes darted around. Who dared to look down on it? After looking around, Dumpling retracted its aura and flapped its wings. But this time, it didn't shrink back. Instead, it looked around from time to time. Chu Liuyue's lips curved into a smile. She and Dumpling were telepathically connected. How could she not know what Dumpling was thinking? It wanted to come back and take a look. It also wanted to know what kind of life its clansmen were living. No matter what, the same blood flowed in their bodies. This power that came from his bloodline naturally made him curious and attached himself to this place. For her, it pretended that it didn't care about all this. It was even prepared to cut ties with everything here forever. But Chu Luiyue couldn't bear to let it do that. At this moment, some gazes finally landed on Dumpling. Is that the legendary Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix? It looks ordinary. There's nothing special about it, right? Didn't you notice that it's still sitting on that human shoulder? Isn't that special? Iran put his hands behind his back and looked over. With just one look, he frowned. A look of disgust flashed across his eyes. Indecent. At this moment, Yi Zhao suddenly looked over. Iran, bring Shang Wanyu and the rest to Fenghuang Valley. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1571. It was a simple sentence, but the amount of information it revealed stunned everyone present. Bring them to Fenghuang Valley. Fenghuang Valley was where all the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenixes rested. It would be normal for the new Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix to go there. But why did it have Shang Wanyu's name? Iran thought he had heard wrongly and asked hesitantly, them? Yi Zhao nodded with an indifferent expression, as if he did not realize that his words had caused a huge uproar. Shang Wanyu will also stay here for a month. He paused for a moment. Let's arrange for them to stay together for now. Although he could not wait to send Shang Wanyu away, seeing her and Dumpling together made his eyes hurt, he could not go back on his word since he had already made a promise. As far as that was concerned, it was obvious that it was best for them to live together. There was dead silence around the Phoenix Shrine. No matter how much they thought about it, they never expected to hear such words from the clan leader. Some people subconsciously looked at the people beside them and realized that they were all equally stunned. Didn't he want Shang Wanyu to break the contract? Didn't he ask her to come over to teach her a lesson? Didn't the clan leader hate humans the most? What was going on now? Shangguan Yu came out of the Phoenix Shrine safely and even wanted to stay in Fenghuang Valley. Was the clan leader crazy? Of course, no one dared to ask that question. Everyone could only respond with a long silence. Ran, what are you waiting for? Elder Yu was the first to speak, and he broke this practically suffocating atmosphere. You are very familiar with Fenghuang Valley. Arrange for a quiet place for them, understand? Ran choked and subconsciously looked at Elder Gong beside him. Elder Gong's brows furrowed imperceptibly, but his expression soon returned to normal. Whatever the clan leader asks you to do, just do it. Ran opened his mouth. Yes. With great difficulty, he suppressed the surging emotions in his heart and tried his best to remain calm. For the first time, he looked at Chu Luyue in the eye. What exactly happened in the Phoenix Shrine just now? Elder Gong had mentioned this matter to him before. At that time, he clearly said that the clan leader planned to let them break the contract directly and give each of them some suffering. But now... Why did the wind suddenly change? But in front of so many people, he couldn't ask. Yi Zhao looked at Chu Luyue indifferently. Ran is one of the best in the younger generation of the clan, and many things are handled by him. During this period of time, if you have any problems, just look for him directly. Ran frowned. Elder Gong was the first to refute. Patriarch, Ran is currently at the critical juncture of his breakthrough. I'm afraid that he might not be able to deal with these matters in time. The elders had different expressions on their faces. What could possibly happen in this 1 month? Besides, Shangguan Yu had been busy trying to think of a way to help Dumpling break through, so they didn't have time to stir up trouble. That was not what he had said when he was trying to seize power for Ran. Now, it's troublesome. On the surface, it sounded nice, but in fact, he just didn't want to waste time and energy on these things. Yi Zhao's expression didn't change. Elder Yu probed. The ancestral worship ceremony is around the corner, and Ran is busy cultivating. It wouldn't be good if he was delayed by other things. Coincidentally, I don't have anything to do during this period of time, so why don't I take charge of everything here? Although he was one of the 5 elders, the important matters had already been divided between Gong and Shang. Only some insignificant matters were left for him to deal with. He was very free. Elder Gong's expression changed. Patriarch, Ran, and I didn't mean that. Yi Zhao ignored him and only glanced at Elder Yu and nodded. Then you can take them there. Elder Gong wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he tactfully kept quiet. Chu Luyue responded and turned to bow to Elder Yu with a smile. Then I'll have to trouble Elder Yu. Elder Yu actually didn't have any ill feelings towards Chu Luyue. In his opinion, she was indeed quite capable to be able to bring a 9-colored heavenly pheasant all the way to this day. Moreover, from some of the previous things, she was really good to Dumpling. Just these were already pretty good. Elder Yu raised his chin at her. Follow me. After saying that, he moved and quickly flew in a certain direction. Chu Luyue was about to move when Dumpling suddenly flew in front of her. She smiled and pulled it back. It's not like I can't go there myself. You just have to stay here. What a joke. In front of so many crimson gold heavenly phoenixes, she stepped on Dumpling's back and flew. Did she have a death wish? When Dumpling heard that, it obediently went back. Chu Luyue suddenly took a deep breath and moved her feet slightly. She immediately followed Elder Yu. Under the gaze of countless pairs of eyes, their figures finally gradually disappeared behind the undulating mountain range. And when their figures really disappeared, the people who stayed on the spot slowly came back to their senses. That Shangguan Yu just stayed here. And with that crimson gold heavenly phoenix. They didn't even cancel the contract. Yi Zhao looked around and said in a deep voice. What are you all still looking at? The ancestral worship ceremony is about to begin. Are you all ready? Hearing these words, the crowd dispersed in an instant. The few elders also bid farewell to Yi Zhao and prepared to return to continue preparing for the ancestral worship ceremony. Yi Zhao didn't say anything else and turned to return to the shrine of Phoenix alone. The lively scene quickly quieted down. Yi Ran couldn't help but run toward Elder Yi Gong. Master, what exactly is going on? Digression, urging the surrounding activities for the last time tomorrow at 12:00 mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1572. Elder Yi Gong's expression was cold. Follow me. The two of them returned to Elder Yi Gong's residence. After entering the forest and confirming that there was no one else around, Elder Yi Gong gradually slowed down and finally stopped beside a lake. Yi Ran followed behind. Master, Elder Yi Gong turned around and interrupted him. How's your cultivation recently? When can you break through? Yi Ran was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect that the first question would be this. After thinking for a moment, he said, I should be able to succeed in half a month. Should. Elder Yi Gong narrowed his eyes and said coldly, there's no should. What I want is definitely. The ancestral worship ceremony is about to begin. Before that, you must break through as soon as possible. Yi Ran was even more confused. His talent had always been at the top of the younger generation. He had always been the most outstanding one. As his master, Elder Yi Gong had always doted on him. He had never spoken to him in such a harsh tone. Yi Ran thought for a moment. His master was clearly fine yesterday. Today, he just went to the Phoenix Shrine and came out with a change of attitude. Could it be that something really happened there? Yes. Don't worry, Master. I will definitely break through before the ancestral worship ceremony. I will definitely not let you down. Yi Ran lowered his head and replied respectfully. Elder Yi Gong put his hands behind his back and stared at him with a heavy gaze. Yi Ran, I'm not asking you this because I'm worried that you will be disappointed. It's because the ancestral worship ceremony this time is extremely important to you. If you can't get the first place, then the position of young master will not be yours. As he spoke, his voice softened a little. For this day, you have been cultivating diligently all these years and didn't dare to relax at all. I've seen all of this. It's also because of this that I can't let anyone threaten you. Threaten? Yi Ran frowned slightly. Currently, the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan was not flourishing. He was already the top genius of the younger generation and was basically confident of getting that position. Who else could pose a threat to him? Suddenly, his expression changed as he suddenly realized something. Master, are you talking about that new Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix is very likely to be a formidable opponent for you? Elder Yi Gong said resolutely. Seeing his confident expression, Yi Ran felt that something was amiss. But it's just something that the nine-colored heavenly pheasant broke through and isn't worth mentioning. Why? On what basis could he compete with him? Elder Yi Gong's face turned ugly as he snorted coldly. Its origin is indeed not much, but its luck is too good, and its bloodline power is extremely strong. If that wasn't the case, do you think that Shangguan you would be able to walk out of the Phoenix Shrine unscathed today? Wasn't it all because of that Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix? Yi Ran held his breath. He wasn't stupid. He couldn't be any clearer about the weight of Elder Yi Gong's words. To be able to make the patriarch relent and allow her to stay, its talent, is it really that powerful? Yi Ran couldn't help but mutter. Elder Yi Gong's lips moved, but in the end, he didn't reveal the truth. Before he came out, the patriarch had repeatedly instructed him not to reveal this news before the ancestral worship ceremony. He could only endure it. In short, its bloodline is definitely not inferior to yours. Although it's still young, it can't be underestimated. You just have to remember, you can't let your guard down. As he spoke, he paused for a moment and comforted Iran. Of course, from the looks of it, it has a fatal flaw. Its contract with Shangguanyu hasn't been rescinded, really. Iran looked up with a face full of surprise. The patriarch had always been a man of his word, but this time, the matters here are more complicated. It's useless for you to know so much now. Elder Yi Gong didn't want to say more. He patted Iran's shoulder and said earnestly, "As long as you can break through as soon as possible and obtain the first place in the ancestral worship ceremony, you don't have to worry about anything else." Iran was full of questions, but seeing that his master didn't seem to want to say anything, he suppressed his emotions and nodded seriously. "Yes." Elder Yi Gong revealed a look of satisfaction. "Very good. Have you comprehended the things that I've taught you before?" Iran said. "There are a few points that I still have doubts about." "Let's hear them." The news that Shangguanyu was going to stay in Fenghuang Valley for a month quickly spread throughout the entire Phoenix Godly Mountain. In an instant, the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan was in an uproar. All sorts of rumors about this matter also spread rapidly. Many people started to ask around to find out who this Shangguanyu was. In just half a day, the name Shangguanyu had become famous in the Phoenix Godly Mountain. However, Chu Luiyue didn't care about this at all. She was bringing Dumpling and following Elder Yu to the legendary Fenghuang Valley. "Here, this will be your place of residence for the time being." Elder Yu stood in the air and pointed to the front as he chuckled. "This location is a little remote, but most people won't pass by here on their way back. It's quiet." Chu Luiyue looked at the golden ball of light 10 steps ahead and smiled as she nodded in thanks. "Thank you so much. Dumpling and I like this place very much." She didn't like noisy places. Moreover, this was someone else's territory. They only had a month, and she hoped that they wouldn't be disturbed. This Elder Yu seemed to be a good person. Chu Luiyue had a good impression of him, and her smile became more sincere. Elder Yu looked at her and then looked at Tuanzi, and then he smiled. Even if he didn't consider Shangguanyu, he had to find a good place for Dumpling. Pure bloodline, how many years had it been since the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan appeared? This was a treasure. He took a few steps forward and gently covered the ball of light with his hand. Whing! There was a slight vibration. Then, he retracted his hand and looked at Chu Luiyue with a smile. "It's good that you like it. Then, I won't disturb you. I've left a trace of my aura on it. If there's any problem, just put your hand on it. I'll rush over as soon as possible." Chu Luiyue thanked him again and watched as Elder Yu left. It wasn't until his figure had completely disappeared that she withdrew her gaze and turned to look at the ball of light. The ball of light wasn't big. From the outside, it could only accommodate a dozen people at most. But Chu Luiyue knew that there was another space inside. She looked up. There were mountains on both sides, and there was a canyon in the middle. It was Fenghuang Valley. And inside, there were several similar balls of light floating in the air. Those must be the resting places of the other Crimson Gold Sky Phoenixes. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up slightly when she sensed the hidden gazes, and she lightly patted Tuanzi. "Dumpling, let's go." Digression, tweet, Jiao at the beginning of the month, spoiled by the big boss after marriage, Su Shuang is a scumbag, in love after marriage, a two-way crush, a Buddhist big boss versus a delicate and sweet wife. Tang Wan only had one mission when she married into the Jiang family, and that was to help a certain someone before he died. Carry on the family line and continue the family line. A certain someone was suspicious. Why does the gentle and shy girl seem to be a different person at night? Tang Wan thought, if I don't hurry up, I'm afraid he doesn't have much time left. But, the child was born, a month old, and a year old. Tang Wan was ready to be a widow. Why wasn't he dead yet? Later, Jiang Wuya asked her in a low voice, I heard that you look forward to my death every day. Do you want to wait until I die? Chapter 1573. There was a small space inside the ball of light. Mountains rose and fell, and streams glowing with reddish gold light gurgled through the forest. It was lush and full of vitality. The rich energy of heaven and earth filled it, making people feel relaxed and happy. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but praise. As expected of the ancient divine beasts, they have a deep foundation. This cultivation environment alone isn't much better than the outside world. Even Lingxiao College and Yuntian Tower were slightly inferior to this place. Tuanzi blinked her eyes curiously and looked around. Chu Luiyue chuckled. This will be your territory from now on. You can look at it however you want. Dumpling turned its head and rubbed against her face intimately. The most important thing now is to help you transform into a human as soon as possible. Hearing this, Dumpling's body stiffened slightly. Chu Luiyue picked it up. By the way, I haven't asked you before. What age does the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan have to transform into a human under normal circumstances? Dumpling looked conflicted. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly. After a long pause, Dumpling's voice came hesitantly from the bottom of her heart. 100 years old. The smile on Chu Luiyue's face suddenly froze. There was a dead silence all around. After a while, Chu Luiyue spoke with difficulty. How much? Tuanzi wailed, and its small head drooped down weakly. I didn't agree to it before. However, Chu Luiyue didn't give it a chance to interrupt and directly agreed to Yi Zhao's request. It's going to be difficult to solve this problem now. The corner of Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched violently. No wonder Yi Zhao was suddenly willing to relent. It turns out, she knew that this matter would be difficult, but she didn't expect it to be a bottomless pit. After a long pause, Chu Luiyue asked, why didn't you tell me before? Dumpling flapped its little wings. You didn't ask. At that time, when it saw how confident she was, it thought that she must know and was confident that she could do it. Who knew? Chu Luiyue rubbed his glabella, feeling a headache coming on. Dumpling looked up at her cautiously. One man and one beast stared at each other. Is there any other way? Chu Luiyue thought about it carefully. Other than the age restriction, what was more important was the level of strength. Sure enough, hearing this, Tuanzi nodded obediently. As long as I can successfully open 3 meridians, I will be able to take human form. Chu Luiyue was a little confused. Opening 3 meridians. Dumpling explained. Although we are all crimson gold heavenly phoenixes, our strengths are different. Generally speaking, every breakthrough is considered opening 1 meridian. Chu Luiyue nodded and looked Dumpling up and down. Then you are now 1 meridian. Dumpling answered honestly. Chu Luiyue wasn't surprised by this result. After all, Dumpling had just broken through a few months ago. It was normal for her to be at the level of 1 meridian. From 1 meridian to 3 meridians, it shouldn't be too difficult, right? Chu Luiyue asked curiously. Then do you know how many meridians your clan leader has opened? Dumpling thought for a while and said, clan leader should have opened 7 meridians. Amazing, Chu Luiyue exclaimed in his heart. Dumpling nodded in agreement. Yes, except for the clan leader who opened 7 meridians, the others only opened 6 meridians. The others? Chu Luiyue reacted. You mean, the 5 elders? Tuanzi fluttered its wings and said carelessly, "That's right." "Yes. Other than them, the rest are even lower in level. There are very few who have opened 5 meridians." Needless to say, it was talking about those who had surrounded the Phoenix Shrine. A white light suddenly flashed in Chu Liuyue's mind. Then, she leaned closer to Dumpling and stared at its eyes seriously. Dumpling didn't understand. Chu Liyue held her breath, softened her voice, and asked, "Dumpling, how did you know their level?" Dumpling was stunned and said blankly, I knew it with one look." "Wasn't that simple?" Chu Liyue's emotions surged. For human cultivators, low-level cultivators couldn't see the specific level of people who were stronger than them. Dumpling had only opened 1 meridian. Logically speaking, it should be the lowest level existence in the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. How did it see so much? Or, was the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan different from humans? Because they had the same bloodline, it could directly sense this. Chu Liyue's heart was filled with doubts. If it was anyone else, it would be fine, but Yi Zhao was the clan leader. With such a high and mighty identity, how could he allow others to see through his true strength? No matter how she thought about it, it didn't seem right. She stared at Dumpling again. It was blinking at her with an innocent face. Chu Liyue's thoughts turned. After thinking for a long time, she said, "Dumpling, we'll basically stay here for this period of time. But if you go out later, don't mention this to anyone else." Dumpling didn't know what she was thinking in her heart. It could only obediently agree. Chu Liyue raised her eyes and looked around. "Let me think, how are you going to open the remaining 2 meridians in this month's time?" Night fell. The huge curtain of night enveloped the wilderness. Inside the Phoenix Shrine, it was brightly lit. A faint glow shone through the window. It was sacred and noble, unapproachable. Inside the main hall, it was silent. A lone figure stood there. It was Yi Zhao. He had been standing in this position for a long time since the evening. He was looking at the wall in front of him. On it, there was a huge mural painted with thick ink and heavy colors. Between the chaotic heaven and earth, a reddish-gold figure was spreading its wings, passing through the sea of clouds and flying out. The feathers on its body were visible, almost as if they were real. Just by looking like this, one could feel the powerful aura that almost broke through the wall. This was the ancestor of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Unfortunately, its eyes were pitch black, as if they had been gouged out by something. Without its eyes, it seemed to have lost its soul, causing it to be helplessly bound within this cold wall. Ancestor, the purest bloodline has finally appeared again. I wonder if this time, can't, knock knock. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Clan leader, EU requests an audience. Yi Zhao came back to his senses. Come in. As he spoke, he turned around and looked at the person who came in. At this moment, the expression on his face had returned to its usual indifference and calmness. Elder Yu walked in. His gaze subconsciously swept past the huge mural, and he sighed in his heart. Clan leader, are you looking at the ancestor again? You're always like this, it's very tiring. Yi Zhao's expression was indifferent. The ancestral worship ceremony is around the corner, and a new bloodline has returned. I should make a trip. Elder Yu knew that it was useless to persuade him, so he didn't dwell on it for too long. Don't worry, I've already made arrangements for Shangguan Yu and Dumpling. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1574. Yi Zhao nodded. Of course I'm not worried about you. Yu smiled. Actually, I thought you would hand them over to me directly today. I didn't expect you to call Iran first. Yi Zhao said indifferently. He won't do it anyway. If I pass them to you, it won't arouse suspicion. Yi Gong had always been suspicious. If he did it directly, he would be suspicious again. It was good that he and Yi Ran had rejected it this time. Yi Ran has always been smart. Unfortunately, he was too smart for his own good. Elder Yi Yu's smile faded and he shook his head. At this moment, he didn't look like his usual impulsive self. He was clearly a cunning old fox. Like master, like disciple. Yi Zhao knew what kind of people they were, so he naturally knew the most effective way to deal with them. Elder Yi Yu lowered his head slightly. You've always been good at strategizing. Today's matter is actually under your control. Yi Zhao raised his hand. No. I didn't want to keep that Sheng Wanyu in the beginning. Because he really didn't expect this woman to be so hooligan. Besides, Dumpling's bloodline is much better than I expected. At this point, Yi Zhao's face finally showed a hint of satisfaction. It's not a waste of effort. When he first knew that a crimson gold heavenly phoenix had appeared in Lingxiao College, he didn't pay much attention. It was only because he knew that it had formed a contract with a human that he wanted to call it back as soon as possible. However, after hearing some things, he vaguely felt that this crimson gold heavenly phoenix seemed to be a little unusual. Seeing it today, it was indeed true. Elder Yi Yu also smiled. Isn't that so? The purest bloodline hasn't appeared in our clan for a long time. It really came at the right time for us now. Unfortunately, it's still too young. Yi Zhao shook his head. If it can't take human form, it can't participate in the ancestral worship ceremony. Elder Yi Yu was shocked and suddenly looked up. You wanted to participate in the ancestral worship ceremony? With Dumpling's age, he thought that the patriarch would wait for the next time. Suddenly, something flashed through his mind. Is this the reason why you agreed to work for Sheng Wanyu? Yi Zhao turned around and looked at the mural. Since she has the guts to accept this bet, let's see if she has the ability. Yuntian Tower. Rong Xiu worked day and night without stopping, rushing back from Lingxiao College. As soon as he stepped into the barrier, he saw Yan Qing waiting with a group of people. Seeing Rong Xiu, Yan Qing immediately led her people to salute him. Greetings, Your Highness. Rong Xiu raised his hand, indicating for them to get up. As he rushed towards Upsetting Peak, he asked, What's the situation at the Yuntian Tower recently? Yan Qing followed closely behind with a grim expression. Reporting to Master, all of the elders and the leaders of the 13 clans have gathered in the Ethereal Hall. 36 respected Elder Ming is in charge of the situation, but the situation isn't optimistic. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes, and his scarlet lips curled up coldly. He seemed to be smiling, but it didn't reach the corners of his eyes. They sure are fast. The last time the Yuntian Tower was so lively was when I took over the throne. That was a few years ago. But this time, Bailey June was unconscious, and these people couldn't sit still anymore. He had rushed back as soon as he received the news from Lingxiao College. And these people were even faster than him. Where's the patriarch now? Rong Xiu asked. Yan Qing's expression was grim. The sacrificial god hole. After the incident, he knew that things were bad, so he immediately brought Bailey June to the sacrificial god hall and set up heavy guards to watch over him. He was worried that someone would do something to him. Rong Xiu nodded lightly. Well done. As long as Bailey June was still in their hands, the matter would be much easier to resolve. After saying those words, Rong Xiu's figure flashed, and he rushed towards Upsetting Peak at an even faster speed. The atmosphere in the solemn ethereal hall was extremely tense. The respected elders of the Yuntian Tower were seated on two sides. The patriarchs of the 28 divisions and the others were seated at a slightly lower position. These dozens of people could be said to be the ones with the highest standing in the Yuntian Tower. At this moment, almost all of them were gathered here. Clearly, they were here for the matter regarding Bailey June. In the silent atmosphere, respected Elder Yujing finally couldn't hold himself back anymore and broke the silence. It has been so long, but His Highness isn't back yet. Could it be that he was delayed on the way back? 36 Respected Elder Ming sipped a mouthful of tea and said calmly, Lingxiao College is extremely far away from the Yuntian Tower, so it's natural that he couldn't be like all of you here, arriving in the blink of an eye after hearing the news. The faces of some people warped. Respected Elder Yujing chuckled. You're right. It's a long journey to return from the Yuntian Tower. Besides, Lingxiao College has been facing a lot of trouble recently, so it's normal for His Highness to be delayed. This is especially so since our new consort is here as well. There wasn't anything wrong with those words, but those present were all intelligent people. How could they not hear the sarcasm in those words? Speaking of which, this consort is really incredible. We all thought that she was still in the sacrificial god hall, but who knew that she had already changed her appearance and secretly went to Lingxiao College. Her reputation has been rising recently. Respected Elder Tong Chuan chuckled and said calmly, this consort is really incredible. This princess consort is very capable. It's no wonder that His Highness, the chosen saint, is interested in her. At this moment, a cold and deep voice suddenly sounded from outside the hall. My consort is naturally unparalleled in the world. Digression, I'm sorry, everyone. The internet connection isn't good on the high-speed rail. I'll continue this afternoon. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 1575. Upon hearing the voice, everyone in the ethereal hall was startled and turned to look. They saw a tall figure walking over against the light. He was dressed in a black brocade robe, and his handsome face was half lit and half dark. As he walked, the corner of his robe fluttered in the wind, bringing with it an unapproachable aura of nobility. His deep eyes were like an ancient well. They looked calm on the surface, but in reality, there were surging undercurrents, making it hard to fathom. When he stepped into the hall, a faint bloody aura silently spread out. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. This man would only have such an aura after killing someone or before he was about to go on a killing spree. 36 Esteemed Elder Ming heaved a sigh of relief and took the lead to welcome him. Welcome back, Saint. Among everyone present, his status was the highest. Seeing him greet him respectfully, everyone finally recovered from their shock and bowed as well. Rong Xiao walked straight ahead. In the quiet hall, only his footsteps were exceptionally clear. Every step he took felt like he was stepping on everyone's hearts. He clearly didn't say anything. Just by walking past everyone, he naturally brought about an indescribable pressure. Rong Xiao walked to the seat of honor, lifted his robe, and sat down. His gaze swept across the hall. The surroundings became even quieter. Without his permission, no one dared to stand up on their own. They could only awkwardly maintain their bowing posture. After a long while, Rong Xiao spoke. Everyone, you may dispense with the formalities. Only then did everyone sit down. However, the atmosphere in the hall was already very different from before. 36 Esteemed Elder Ming leaned against the back of his chair leisurely. He raised his eyelids and sneered coldly in his heart. All of them were extremely arrogant. They even dared to mock the saint and princess consort, causing him to think that they were going to rebel right in front of him. Yet, the moment Rong Xiao arrived, before he could say anything, these people had already retreated. They didn't even dare to let out a fart. He had really overestimated them. Rong Xiao's gaze finally landed on respected Elder Tong Chuan and respected Elder Yujing. His crimson lips curved up slightly as he seemingly smiled. Respected elders have always had high standards, but today you are praising you, so generously. Presumably, you are very satisfied with her. The faces of revered Elder Tong Chuan and the others instantly turned ugly. How was that a compliment? He was clearly mocking him. Sarcasm. But she couldn't say that in front of Rongxiu. After a moment of stalemate, Elder Tong Chuan turned his face away and said indifferently, "The princess consort was personally hand-picked by His Highness the Holy Sun, so she's naturally different from the rest." Rongxiu nodded and said with a smile, "It's rare that revered Elder Tong Chuan shares the same opinion as I." Elder Tong Chuan choked and didn't want to speak anymore. 36 Respected Elder Ming looked outside the door for a while and asked doubtfully, "Your Highness, the princess consort didn't come back with you?" Rongxiu nodded with an indifferent expression. The head of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan personally wrote a letter to invite her to the Divine Phoenix Mountain, so she didn't come back with I. As his voice fell, everyone uncontrollably sucked in a breath of cold air. The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan was extremely noble and the head of the clan was famous for being arrogant. He didn't even take a venerable god expert seriously. Why did he personally write a letter to the head of the Shengguanyu? That's right. She seems to have contracted with a Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix, Respected Elder Tong Chuan suddenly sneered. The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan has never interacted with the human race and views the contract with the human race as a huge stain. Your Highness, aren't you worried at all that the princess consort has passed away? This didn't seem like a good thing. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly. I understand what Respected Elder Tong Chuan means. However, you're worrying too much. If the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan really wants to cause trouble for you, they can just go to her directly like Mao Yao. Isn't it unnecessary to write a letter to invite her? Respected Elder Tong Chuan was stunned. He felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't refute it. Many people secretly exchanged glances. Actually, the Holy Sun's words weren't without reason. According to the usual temper of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, if they really wanted to cause trouble for the Shengguanyu, they wouldn't go through so much trouble. Could it be that the princess consort was really going to the Shengguanyu as a guest? The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan rarely interferes with the affairs of the human race in the Divine Ruins world. This time, they took the initiative to invite the princess consort over. Who knows, they might be able to form good karma. 36 Respected Elder Ming stroked his beard and slowly praised. Everyone was skeptical, but they didn't dare to ask. If it was in the past, they would definitely think that this was all fake. However, it was different now. During this period of time, the news about the Lingxiao College had spread like wildfire. The name Shengguanyu had also spread throughout the Divine Ruins world. Not only was she an all-rounder, but she had also broken through to the high deity level at such a young age. Other than that, her true identity was finally revealed to everyone. Not only was she the descendant of the weapon-refining Venerable Shengguan Jing, but she was also the disciple of the Dean of Lingxiao College, Nan Su Huai. A few months ago, everyone still looked down on her. Now, they only felt that their faces were hurting. Who knew what other trump cards the princess of Shengguanyu was hiding? What kind of heaven-defying methods did she have? Perhaps the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan was really giving her face. It was hard to say, hard to say. Rongxiu's gaze lingered on the dozen or so family heads for a moment. He said calmly, "You will handle her own matters. As for everyone, I rushed back as soon as I received the news. I didn't expect everyone to arrive even earlier. Some people were already sweating." Elder Yu Jingzuan's eyes flickered as he explained. They were also worried about the clan head, so they rushed over. Oh. Rongxiu leaned back and tapped his knuckles on the armrest twice before he smiled faintly. I thought that everyone was waiting for I to come back and give an explanation. Everyone was speechless. Actually, that was their plan all along. However, since Rong Xiao had taken the initiative to strike first, they couldn't say anything. After a long while, Elder Tong Chuan finally spoke up. How would we dare to investigate your highness's actions? It's just that the clan head has been unconscious ever since she returned from Lingxiao College. And the only one who knew more about what happened at that time was His Highness. Therefore, we only hope that your highness can come back to take charge of the situation and thoroughly investigate what happened. Her words were tactful, but she was actually pushing all the blame to Rong Xiao without batting an eyelid. Unfortunately, Rong Xiao wasn't someone who would be manipulated by others. He nodded his head in agreement. Elder Tong Chuan's words are reasonable. I rushed back because I had the same thoughts. In fact, I had already gone to the sacrificial god hall to visit the clan head. Now that I've seen it, I've indeed found a problem. Rong Xiao paused for a moment before his gaze landed on Elder Yu Jingzuan. Elder Yu Jingzuan, why do I sense your aura in the clan head's body? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1576. Elder Yu Jingzuan was shocked and raised his head. He had clearly erased all traces. How could he still be discovered? Meeting Rong Xiao's cold, knife-like eyes, he instantly felt a chill down his spine. An indescribable fear surged from the depths of his heart. I didn't. Rong Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. Elder Yu Jingzuan, are you saying that I have wronged you? Elder Yu Jingzuan forced himself to calm down. No. Your Highness might have mistaken me for someone else. It's not I's first day knowing you. How could I have mistaken you for someone else? Rong Xiao interrupted him and asked. Elder Yu Jingzuan choked and couldn't say anything else. No one spoke in the hall. The air was stagnant. Rong Xiao asked slowly. Before I came back, I received news that the patriarch had returned from Fangzhou City and returned to his own place. He didn't see anyone. Then where did the aura in his body come from? Elder Yu Jingzuan's face gradually paled. I came back to investigate this matter. Then, let's start with you, Elder Yu Jingzuan. Phoenix God Mountain. Chu Luiyue and Dumpling sat facing each other beside a golden stream. A gentle breeze blew and the leaves swayed, casting mottled shadows on the ground. Dumpling, do you really not feel the signs of opening your second meridian? Chu Luiyue stared at Dumpling and asked cautiously. Dumpling shook her head. Sigh. I knew it. Chu Luiyue sighed deeply and looked at Dumpling in front of her. She was very worried. 3 days had already passed. During this time, she had tried all kinds of methods, but Dumpling still had no intention of continuing to break through. It didn't even have the slightest feeling. Chu Luiyue asked it countless times, but the answer was always the same. Bang! Chu Luiyue slumped back. Fluffy leaves flew into the air. I should have realized that it's not that simple. Dumpling broke through from the red-tailed red phoenix to the crimson-gold heavenly phoenix. How many months had it been? It was unrealistic for it to break through again in the blink of an eye. According to Dumpling, ordinary crimson-gold heavenly phoenixes would only have the chance to open 3 meridians when they were 100 years old. How old was it now? Wanting to open 3 meridians was no different from wishful thinking. Dumpling lowered her head, looking downcast. As expected, it was because it was too useless. If it could directly open 3 meridians, she wouldn't have such a headache and wouldn't have to be locked in here with it, unable to leave. The more Dumpling thought about it, the more she blamed herself. Her head was almost buried in the feathers on her chest. Sensing its mood, Chu Luiyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He sat up again and pulled it over. It's not your problem. I was too impulsive before. I should have done my homework before agreeing. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. Dumpling, if you trigger Tianlei, can it help you break through? Previously at Thousand Wine Mountain, Dumpling had activated its bloodline and broken through to become a crimson gold heavenly phoenix because it had devoured the power of Tianlei. She didn't know if this trick would still work now. Dumpling tilted its head, looking confused. Actually, it wasn't very sure either. Chu Luiyue made up her mind. I'll only know after I try. She looked up at the sky. This was a special space within the light ball, so the sky was also a faint crimson color. Only at the edge of the field, there was a bright golden light. With such rich heaven and earth energy, I should be able to successfully trigger Tianlei, right? Chu Luiyue thought of this and flew to the top of the mountain. There were many ways to trigger Tianlei, but the most convenient and fastest way was naturally to refine weapons. It just so happened that after she recovered her memories, she hadn't tested her current level yet. She could take this opportunity to take a look. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes and looked at her wrist. With a thought, a light pink peach blossom mark slowly appeared. This thing was given to her by 36 respected Elder Ming. It could teleport silently and wouldn't cause any energy fluctuations. Now that she had regained her high god state, this thing seemed a little useless. However, if she could raise its level and make it teleport further, it would be good. She did as she said. Chu Luiyue took out the star stone, jumped on it, and sat cross-legged. Tuanzi squatted beside her and looked at her eagerly. Chu Luiyue held her breath and focused. The next moment, her wrist gently turned. Instantly, light flickered. A bracelet slowly appeared on her wrist. It was a bracelet made of black rattan as thick as a thumb, with a small light pink peach blossom blooming on it. The bracelet automatically fell off and quietly floated in front of her. There was a faint luster on it, quiet and reserved. And that peach blossom seemed to be swaying with the wind, full of vitality and very moving. She didn't know if she could succeed this time, Chu Luiyue thought to herself as she started to activate the elemental energy in her body. Time passed by slowly. However, on the mountain peak, it was still peaceful. Chu Luiyue opened her eyes and looked up. The sky was bright and cloudless. There was no movement at all. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but furrow her brows. She really couldn't do it here. Inside this light ball was a special area in Fenghuang Valley, and it was full of natural energy. It was almost impossible for her to mobilize the energy in this area and trigger Tianlei with her own strength. Even if she was a high god now. Compared to an ancient divine beast like the crimson gold sky phoenix, it was still not enough. Chu Luiyue rested her chin on her hand and fell into deep thought again. Go out. That didn't seem right. In the crimson gold sky phoenix clan, there were countless pairs of eyes staring at her and Dumpling, waiting to see them make a fool of themselves. Once they left this place, no one knew what would happen outside. She didn't think that they would be on her side. But if she continued to stay here, what could she do to mobilize the natural energy? Suddenly, her brows twitched. Dumpling looked at Chu Luiyue blankly. Her expression was strange. She seemed excited and hesitant at the same time. After a while, it finally saw Chu Luiyue clench her fist as if she had made up her mind. Let's do it. Before Dumpling could react, she saw something appear in Chu Luiyue's palm. It was a thumb-sized, shuttle-like seed. Its entire body was crimson, sparkling and translucent. At this moment, a small leaf had sprouted from it. It was tender and cute. Dumpling's eyes widened and she hurriedly retreated. This. Why did she take this out? At this moment, an idea popped up in Chu Luiyue's mind. That young and tender leaf swayed gently. Whoosh! The natural energy swept over. At the same time, in Fenghuang Valley, a strong wind blew. Within Fenghuang Valley, Elder EU, who had been resting, rushed out with a face full of shock. When he saw the heaven and earth energy tide in the sky, he was stunned. What is this? Digression, it would probably be night by the time they reached home. Tomorrow at 12 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1577. The rest of the people in Fenghuang Valley sensed the commotion and rushed out. What happened? What happened? Why is the heaven and earth energy suddenly raging? Everyone was at a loss. In the end, they all looked up at the sky. When they saw the surging tide of energy, they were all shocked. Although Fenghuang Valley was filled with heaven and earth energy, it had always been peaceful. Such a situation had never happened before. But now, wait, the energy seems to be flowing in that direction. Suddenly, someone exclaimed in a low voice. Everyone looked in the direction he was pointing at. Did something happen over there? I'm not sure. Isn't that place very secluded? Why is it happening all of a sudden? However, when Elder EU saw the direction in which the energy tide was surging, he was shocked. Wasn't that where Shangguanyu and Dumpling were? Due to various reasons, he had arranged for them to be in a secluded area. Over there, besides them, there was no one else. Everyone, stay where you are. Don't move. Elder EU gave the order and dashed in the direction of the battle. Although the rest were curious, they did not dare to disobey his order and could only wait obediently. Elder EU's figure quickly disappeared into the distance. The crowd started to discuss again. The commotion in the sky showed no signs of stopping. Instead, it became even more intense. The heaven and earth energy seemed to be easily controlled by an invisible hand and rushed in from all directions. Even though they were standing below, they could still feel the terrifying pressure. At that moment, another person walked out of the ball of light. His expression was extremely ugly, and his eyes seemed to be burning with the flames of anger. It was Iran. He suppressed the anger in his heart and raised his head to take a look. Soon after, he asked coldly, "What's going on?" The people beside him saw that his expression was not right and did not dare to ask further. They only explained, "We're not sure. Something seems to have happened over there. Elder EU just went over." As he spoke, he even raised his hand and pointed. Iran looked in that direction and laughed coldly. "I've heard that Shangguanyu is a troublemaker. Back in Lingxiao College, they were very arrogant and caused a lot of trouble. I didn't expect that even after coming here, you still can't change your nature." After his reminder, everyone finally remembered that the people on the other side were none other than Shangguanyu and Dumpling, who had been here for a few days. If it really causes any accidents, that Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix won't be able to escape responsibility. Iran was furious. Originally, he was peacefully cultivating. But after receiving some guidance from his master, he finally felt a little bit of a breakthrough. But at this moment, Fenghuang Valley was in chaos, interrupting his cultivation. How could he not be angry? There wasn't much time left until the ancestral worship ceremony. He had to make the best use of his time to break through. After today's incident, all their previous efforts had been wasted. Seeing that he was in a bad mood, no one dared to ask about it in detail. They only echoed his words. Elder EU came to the light sphere where Chu Luiyue and Dumpling were. As soon as he got close, he felt a shocking pressure. His pupils shrank. Didn't Shangguanyu just become a high deity? Logically speaking, such a level of strength shouldn't be able to cause such a huge commotion, right? Just as he was about to raise his hand, the sky suddenly darkened. Elder EU paused and raised his head. He saw that the originally clear sky was now filled with dark clouds, and the wind was howling. A silvery bolt of heavenly lightning slithered through the clouds like a silver snake. Tianlei. Elder EU suddenly realized something, and his eyes widened slightly. Realizing the severity of the situation, he didn't hesitate. He pressed his hand on the light sphere and stepped in. The moment he stepped in, Elder EU was almost blown away by the strong wind. He quickly steadied himself and looked in front of him. Then, he saw Shengguanyu sitting cross-legged on top of the mountain. Dumpling was small and squatting beside her. At this moment, an energy vortex had already formed above their heads, directly connecting to the golden ball of light barrier. The commotion outside was indeed caused by them. High deity, Elder EU instinctively opened his mouth. Then, he suddenly saw the bracelet hanging in front of Chu Luyue, and quickly shut his mouth. Is she refining a weapon? Although he was a crimson gold celestial phoenix, he still knew some things about the human race. When refining a weapon, the requirements for the surrounding environment were extremely high, and they couldn't be disturbed. However, at this moment, the woman suddenly raised her head and looked over. When she saw that it was Elder EU, a bright smile bloomed on her face. Elder EU. Elder EU was a little confused. You're not refining a weapon. I am. But I'm still in the preparation stage. Chu Luyue looked up. I think it'll take a while. Although the two Tian baby could easily mobilize the energy of heaven and earth, it would still take a while to attract enough Tianlei. As she spoke, she looked at Elder EU with a smile. Why are you here? Elder EU's eyelids twitched. Why am I here? She actually asked me why I'm here. Seeing that Chu Luyue was asking sincerely, Elder EU calmed the fluctuations in his heart and said, You've caused quite a commotion. You've caused quite a ruckus. The natural energies outside are starting to go berserk. Chu Luyue nodded. I know. Wasn't this the reason why she had worked so hard? Elder EU didn't know how to respond for a moment, and fell into a long silence. Chu Luyue blinked. Only then did she understand why he was here. Did it affect everyone? I just wanted to attract Tianlei. It shouldn't affect others, right? Elder EU was even more speechless. Because he thought about it carefully. Although all of this happened suddenly, it did not seem to have affected them much. At most, it could be considered a shock. As for hurting or hindering anyone, it didn't seem to be the case. If that was the case, it would be even more difficult for him to reprimand her. But this is indeed quite a big commotion. Elder EU thought for a moment and said hesitantly, If it's not something very important, then, to be honest with you, I'm not actually here to refine weapons. I'm here to help Dumpling. Chu Luyue shrugged and smiled helplessly. As you know, we only have a month. Elder EU instantly understood and glanced at Tuanzi who was beside him. I see. They summoned Tianlei to try to help Dumpling break through. This is also a method. If it were anyone else, he would definitely think that this was wishful thinking. However, Dumpling has the purest bloodline. Perhaps, Elder EU opened his mouth. Then you guys go ahead, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1578. When Elder EU came out of the ball of light, he immediately sensed countless gazes on him. Elder EU. Ran was the first to welcome him. He looked at his expression, but could not see anything wrong. Did Shengguanyu cause trouble again? Although the crowd did not speak, their expressions showed that they wanted to ask the same question. Elder EU frowned. No. It's just a small misunderstanding. It's just a small misunderstanding. Don't worry, everyone can go back and rest. Ran was stunned. Small misunderstanding. The sky above Fenghuang Valley was still gloomy. Wind and thunder were roaring. You call this a small misunderstanding? Iran could not help but raise his voice. Elder, this has never happened in Fenghuang Valley. Everyone is worried. Are you not worried at all? Elder Iran suddenly chuckled. Iran, are you doubting me? Iran was shocked and quickly lowered his head. Iran wouldn't dare. Shengguan Yu is refining weapons inside. That's what caused this commotion. Everyone, don't worry. Elder Yu looked around. Since when did the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan become so cowardly? Although he was smiling, his words caused the expressions of the surrounding people to change instantly. These words were simply pointing at the nose and scolding. After a while, someone argued. Elder, you misunderstood. We're not afraid. We're just surprised by the sudden commotion. As soon as he said this, everyone agreed. Yes, yes. We just didn't expect it. No human has come here before, right? Yes. To be honest, other than the loud noise, it didn't affect us much. Only then did Elder Yu nod. As long as it doesn't ruin our reputation. Don't forget that when you're looking at her, she's looking at you too. If we embarrass ourselves in front of the human race, that's really. Hearing this, everyone hurriedly nodded in agreement. Only Iran was sullen. No impact. Of course. When he returned this time, he would have to spend a lot of effort to find that door again. However, he could not say these words in front of everyone. He could only swallow it. All right, let's disperse. Elder Yu waved his hand. The crowd quickly dispersed. Iran had just turned around when he turned back unwillingly. Elder, you should be careful of that Shengguan Yu. He had heard that she had caused a lot of trouble in the past. If she did something out of line again. The ancestral worship ceremony was about to begin. That would not be good. Elder Yu glanced at him with a faint smile. Those who didn't know better would think that Iran was the elder instead. Iran felt a little guilty under his stare, and his voice gradually became softer. Only then did Elder Yu calmly reply. These matters will be handled by the patriarch and the elders. You don't have to worry so much. Just focus on your cultivation. Iran knew that he had made a slip of the tongue. His heart beat wildly, and his face turned green and white. He hurriedly responded and turned to leave. Elder Yu stared at his back for a while before shaking his head. He was originally a good seedling, but unfortunately, he was narrow-minded and too ambitious. It was not a good thing to be too smart. Elder Yu turned back to look at the light ball. He retreated a little and began to watch over it. This matter was of great importance and involved Dumpling. Naturally, he had to be careful. The energy tide in Fenghuang Valley surged for a full 7 days. Everyone was shocked at the beginning, but they gradually learned to accept it. In the end, they were almost used to it. Just as Elder Yu had said at the beginning, although the commotion was not small, it did not cause too much trouble for them. After each of them strengthened the light ball's boundary, there was basically no trouble. During these days, Elder Yu had pushed aside all other matters and had been watching over it patiently. Other than the continuous surging tide, everything seemed to have returned to normal. But to some people, that was not the case. Bang! Iran punched the stone wall in front of him fiercely. A crack began to spread from his fist. Intense pain came from his hand. But at this moment, Iran was not in the mood to care about this. He looked up in annoyance. The boundary that originally glowed with reddish-gold light seemed to be shrouded in a layer of shadow. He could vaguely hear the whistling of the wind. The commotion outside was still ongoing. It had been so many days. It still had not stopped. There was no end to it. Because of this, he had been unable to calm down for the past few days. The progress of his cultivation had been delayed again and again. He was so annoyed that he wanted to rush out and order Shengguanyu and the reddish-gold sky phoenix to get out. But he could not. The more he delayed, the more anxious he became, and the less he was in the mood to cultivate. He had fallen into a vicious cycle. Actually, the commotion was basically negligible. Especially since Iran's status in the clan was not low. His light ball was of a higher level than many of his peers. The main reason he was like this was because of himself. Cultivation could not be rushed. But he was eager for quick success and wanted to break through immediately. This was not good. Even if he cultivated in a completely sealed and quiet space, the result would still be the same. Unfortunately, he couldn't understand these principles, so he subconsciously pushed the blame onto others. Iran closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The words that his master had said to him earlier kept appearing in his mind. That reddish-gold sky phoenix, could it really be a threat to him? Boom! At this moment, a loud boom was heard. Iran was shocked and immediately stepped out of the light ball boundary. In Fenghuang Valley, the wind was still howling and the clouds were rolling. A bright and dazzling light suddenly flashed and fell from the sky. It was the Tianlei that had been summoned earlier. After 7 days of brewing, over 100 bolts of heavenly lightning had accumulated in the sky. And now, they finally fell. Their target, the light ball in the depths of Fenghuang Valley. Other than Iran, a few others came out after hearing the commotion. They were all curious and shocked at the scene. At this moment, a crack suddenly appeared at the top of the light ball. Several bolts of heavenly lightning struck down one after another. Boom boom boom. Digression, 6 p.m. Wow. Also, the list of friends is at the top of the comment section. Please join the group as soon as possible. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from LoveNet. Chapter 1579. Countless bolts of lightning struck the ball of light one after another and quickly disappeared. Everyone looked from afar and could only see the dazzling light. It was so dazzling that they could not open their eyes. Amidst the commotion, someone could not help but mutter softly. What kind of divine artifact is Shengguanyu refining? It can actually summon so many Tianlei. No one knew. Elder EU was guarding at the side, and no one could get close. Naturally, no one knew what was going on inside. Thus, everyone could only watch from afar as the ball of light was gradually bathed in a sea of lightning. Elder EU quickly made his move. A reddish-gold flame surged out from his sleeve. In the blink of an eye, it formed a huge barrier that enveloped the space within a radius of dozens of kilometers. Countless lightning bolts splashed on it, causing it to shake violently. It seemed like it would break at any moment. Elder EU frowned, and a trace of seriousness appeared on his face. It was naturally difficult to cause such a commotion with just Shengguanyu. It was highly likely that she had used the 2 Tian baby. Some time ago, what had happened in the Spiritual Firmament Academy had spread like wildfire throughout the entire Divine Ruins world. The most talked about topic was Shengguanyu's true identity, as well as her many trump cards. Needless to say, the Heavenly Square Cauldron, the Supremacy Divine Artifact, and the most shocking thing was that she actually had a 2 Tian baby. Under normal circumstances, only Supremacy experts could control a 2 Tian baby. However, Shengguanyu broke this rule. In fact, too many similar things had happened to her, so much so that everyone was starting to feel numb. In the end, only one conclusion could be reached: Shengguanyu could not be judged by normal standards. It was the same this time. How did a supremacy expert control a 2 Tian baby? Elder EU muttered to himself, his heart full of doubts. At this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air could be heard from afar. He sensed something and quickly turned around to take a look. The person who came was none other than Yi Gong. Before he arrived, he saw the Tianlei that filled the sky and the rumbling Fenghuang mountain. His expression was extremely ugly. Are they trying to rebel against the heavens? In the past 10 days, Elder Yi Gong had been busy preparing for the ancestral worship ceremony, so he didn't know the situation here. He was only alarmed by the heavenly anomaly today and the Tianlei riots. When he rushed over, he didn't expect to see such a scene. Ew! What the hell is going on? Elder Yi Gong's voice was filled with suppressed anger. You don't have to worry, First Elder. It's just that Sheng Wanyu is currently refining weapons, which triggered Tianlei. Elder Yi chuckled as he stepped forward. It's just a small matter. Small matter. Elder Yi Gong immediately raised his eyebrows. He immediately laughed coldly and pointed to the front. Fenghuang Valley is in such a mess and you say it's a small matter. It's not like I haven't seen humans refine artifacts before. It's impossible for them to cause such a huge commotion. There's clearly something fishy going on here. Where's Sheng Wanyu? Let her out. Elder Yi was still smiling, but he seemed to be in a difficult position. This isn't very appropriate. She's refining weapons at a crucial moment. If we force her out now, isn't that, if something really happens, can you bear the responsibility? Elder Yi Gong glanced at him coldly. The threat in his words was self-evident. He could tell that Yu's attitude towards Sheng Wanyu and Dumpling wasn't bad. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so protective of them at this time. Elder Yi paused for a moment. After that, he took a step back and moved aside. Then, we'll do as First Elder says. Elder Yi Gong looked at him meaningfully, then stepped forward. Although the Tianlei was extremely powerful, it wasn't fatal to him, who had already opened 6 meridians. Elder Yi Gong stared at the glowing silver ball, and a murderous intent flashed across his eyes. He didn't know how to stop them, but he didn't expect them to be the first to cause trouble. Creating such a commotion in Phoenix Mountain was equivalent to directly taking their lives. No one could say anything. Sheng Wanyu was refining weapons, and this was the time when she needed to be the most careful. Once she was disturbed, her mind would be in a mess, and she would lose everything. At that time, as her contracted magical beast, Dumpling, would naturally be greatly affected. Perhaps, he could take advantage of this opportunity to end it all. Elder Yi Gong suddenly raised his hand, and flames surged in his palm. He was about to take action. Wait! A voice suddenly sounded. Elder Yi Gong heard it, and his heart was filled with disgust. Yi Shang. It's him again. It was obvious what Yi Shang wanted to do. Elder Yi Gong's eyes darkened, and he decided to ignore him. As long as he could solve the problem of Sheng Wanyu, the rest of the matter wouldn't be a problem. He flipped his wrist and immediately took action. An arrow suddenly flew through the air, drawing a straight black line in the air, and headed straight for the light ball. Elder Yi Shang's eyes darkened when he saw this. At the same time, he waved his sleeves. Chi-chi. A gust of wind blew, blocking the arrow in front of him. In the next moment, the arrow was tightly gripped in his hand. Yi Shang. Elder Yi Gong frowned when his attack didn't succeed. What are you doing? I should be the one asking that question. Elder Yi Shang's expression was calm, but there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. Yu has already sealed the surroundings, and the energy won't spread outside for now. Great Elder, why are you in such a hurry to take action? Elder Yi Gong narrowed his eyes. Of course, I'm thinking for Fenghuang Valley. If something happens, what kind of trouble can a mere exalted god cause? It's fine if you take action now and hurt Shengguanyu, but if it affects the others, I'm afraid it'll be hard to explain to the clan leader, right? With the clan leader mentioned, Elder Yi Gong naturally couldn't say anything more. He gritted his teeth and snorted coldly. Good. Since that's the case, if anything happens, you'll bear all the responsibility. Elder Yi Shang smiled and returned the arrow in his hand. That's what I should do. Elder Yi Gong suppressed the anger in his heart and snatched the arrow back. Master, hearing the voice, he turned his head. Yi Ran. Why aren't you cultivating? Why are you here to join in the fun? Yi Ran hurriedly said. I only came out because I heard the commotion. It's not that. Elder Yi Gong sized him up, and his expression didn't look good. It's been 10 days since I gave him pointers. Why hasn't he broken through yet? But before he could ask, the Tianlei in the sky suddenly struck down at an even faster speed. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1580. Seeing the commotion, everyone in Fenghuang Valley turned to look, each with a different expression. This Shengguanyu, what kind of divine weapon was it forging? Wasn't the speed at which it consumed Tianlei a little too fast? Could she really bear it? Dumpling, how do you feel now? Inside the ball of light, on the mountain peak, Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged, looking at Dumpling above her. The Tianlei did not land on the bracelet. Instead, they were all intercepted by Dumpling. Its small body was covered by the dazzling light, almost impossible to see clearly. Chu Luiyue could only rely on the contract between them to roughly guess its current situation. Dumpling did not make a sound. After a while, the lightning dissipated, and its body was gradually revealed. At that moment, it was fiercely intercepting a Tianlei and swallowing it without hesitation. It was over. A few silver lights flashed across its body, then quickly disappeared under its feathers. The whole process was smooth and without any pause. Burp, Dumpling burped, then spat out another streak of lightning. Chu Luiyue made a tisk sound. Why are you eating in such a hurry? These are all yours anyway. Dumpling lowered its head and looked at her. It blinked pitifully, as if it was embarrassed. Actually, it did not do it on purpose. After seeing the Tianlei, it suddenly felt hungry. It did not know why, but the more it ate, the hungrier it became. In a moment of carelessness, she ate too quickly and burped. At first, it did not feel this way, but for some reason, Chu Luiyue's brows twitched. In reality, she was not as calm as she appeared to be on the surface. She wanted to attract Tianlei to help Dumpling break through, so she let Dumpling intercept the Tianlei halfway. But gradually, she realized that the development of the situation was gradually getting off track. Dumpling's tolerance and ability to swallow Tianlei far exceeded her expectations. Seeing Dumpling bathing in Tianlei, not only was it not injured, but it also became more energetic. Chu Luiyue was completely relieved. Perhaps, the experience in the Eye of 1,000 Wine Spring made Dumpling so different. The answer was unknown. But she knew that attracting Tianlei would be helpful for Dumpling's breakthrough. The aura on its body was rapidly becoming stronger as the amount of heavenly lightning it devoured increased. As long as it persevered, it might really be able to open Dumpling's meridians in the remaining time. Soon, another bolt of heavenly lightning struck. Dumpling looked up, its eyes sparkling, eager to make a move. The waiting time seemed to be particularly unbearable. Everyone in Phoenix Mountain was starting to get impatient from waiting. They looked up again and again, but they were disappointed again and again. This was because the sky was still dark, and within the clouds, the heavenly lightning gathered endlessly, as if there was no end to it. No one knew how long this situation would last. Elder Yu yawned and greeted them lazily. No, I've been watching here all this time, and my eyes have almost never closed. I really can't hold on any longer. I'll go rest first." With that, he turned around and left in a carefree manner. He was not worried at all. With Yi Gong and Yi Shang here, there would absolutely be no problem. Besides, he was indeed tired. Judging from the current situation, it would not stop for a while. He might as well go back and take a nap. Elder Yi Gong's expression was very displeased. Was he pushing all the blame onto them? But he still had a lot of things to do. How could he keep waiting here? Who knew how long he would have to wait? However, he was unwilling to leave just like that. On the other hand, Elder Yi Shang seemed to be unperturbed as he waited patiently. Elder Yi Gong thought for a moment and turned to look at Yi Ran. "Go back first and cultivate in peace." Yi Ran did not want to waste any more time here, but he was worried that he would not be able to calm down after returning. "Master, this commotion is really a little big." Elder Yi Gong had been his master for many years, so he naturally guessed his thoughts. He could not help but frown and pat his shoulder. Yi Ran only felt a warm force enter his body instantly. His heart skipped a beat. "As long as you're focused enough, this won't affect you, understand?" Yi Ran hurriedly responded. "Thank you for your teachings, master." "Go back." "Yes." Yi Ran did not continue to argue and quickly left. Elder Yi Shang's gaze lingered on him for a moment, but he quickly looked away as if nothing had happened. After Yi Ran left, many people began to return one after another. However, whether they could completely withdraw their thoughts was another matter. A day passed quickly. Elder Yi Gong's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. His throbbing temples showed that he was on the verge of exploding in anger. "What is Shengguan Yu trying to do?" After so long, Fenghuang Valley still could not calm down. The heavenly lightning continued to gather and strike down one after another. He had already lost count of how many bolts of lightning had entered the ball of light. Elder Yi Shang smiled faintly. Refining weapons is very troublesome. It was said that some weapon refiners would spend months or even years to refine a divine artifact. Although Shengguan Yu's level is not that high, her Taizu is a venerable weapon refiner. Her talent and ability in this area should not be weak. 1 or 2 days, naturally, it is not enough. Elder Yi Gong choked. His lips moved, but in the end, he swallowed the rest of his words. Elder Yi Shang glanced at him, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. What he did not say was that Tianlei would usually summon everyone to refine weapons at once, or once in a while to refine them repeatedly. But unlike Shengguan Yu, it seemed like there was no end to it at the beginning. It went on and on. Usually, only weapon refiners would know about such things. He only knew about it because he had seen it unintentionally. However, there was no need to tell Yi Gong this. He crossed his arms and looked ahead. How did Shengguan Yu do this? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1581. Another few days passed. Everything was the same in Fenghuang Valley. After looking up for the umpteenth time, he realized that the number of Tianlei had not decreased. Elder Yi Gong could no longer hold himself back and left in anger. He wanted to see an accident happen in Shengguan Yu. He also wanted to see the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix suffer. It would be best if they could disappear together. Unfortunately, he did not have the time to wait here. The ancestral worship ceremony was about to begin. There were many things waiting for him to arrange. Not long after Elder Yi Gong left, Elder Yi Yu slowly came over. He grinned at Elder Yi Shang and said, "I'll keep an eye on things here. You'd better go busy yourself with the ancestral worship ceremony." Elder Yi Shang didn't refuse and nodded. Keep an eye on things. Elder Yi Yu laughed out loud. I know. Don't worry. Other than Fenghuang Valley, the other places of Fenghuang Mountain were bustling with activity. Of course, this bustle was mostly solemn, nervous, and serious. Every time they held an ancestral worship ceremony, they would prepare a grand ceremony, and this year was no exception. Many people were busy, checking repeatedly, afraid that they would miss anything. But at this moment, Fenghuang Temple was still silent. Within the temple, Yi Zhao took one last look at the huge mural and bowed deeply. Ancestor, you must protect our clan. He maintained this posture for a long time, then finally turned and left the temple. After walking out, there was a huge square in front of the main hall. Clear and lustrous white jade stones were laid out neatly, and could clearly reflect each person's figure. In the center was the totem of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. At this moment, the square was guarded by many people. This was the place where the ancestral worship ceremony was held. When they saw Yi Zhao, they all bowed respectfully. Greetings, clan leader. Yi Zhao raised his hand and looked at the surroundings before he asked in an indifferent voice. Where's Yigong? Everyone looked at each other. The person in front lowered his head. Clan leader, Grand Elder should still be in Fenghuang Valley. Yi Zhao frowned. What is he doing there? Have you finished the preparations in the main hall? Hearing the dissatisfaction in his tone, the people below naturally did not dare to say anything. Yi Zhao lifted his gaze and looked in the direction of Fenghuang Valley. From here, one could vaguely see dark clouds gathering in Tianlei. Of course, he knew what was going on over there. Fenghuang Valley has always been under the care of EU. As a Grand Elder, why did he run over to join in the fun for such a long time? Please forgive me, Patriarch. Suddenly, a somewhat hurried voice sounded. It was Yi Palace who had just returned. When he saw Yi Zhao standing there, he knew something was wrong, but he could only bite the bullet and go over. Yi Zhao's gaze was as sharp as a knife. He slowly scanned his body, as if he wanted to peel off a layer of his skin. Elder Yigong's forehead was drenched in cold sweat. But in the end, Yi Zhao did not reprimand him too much. Forget it, let's talk about this later. First, he had to prepare for the Great Hall. Elder Yigong secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Yes. Yes. Yi Zhao looked at the sky and frowned. I see that you still have a lot of things to do. If you don't complete them in the remaining time. Elder Yigong was about to defend himself when he heard Yi Zhao continue. The date of the ancestral worship ceremony will be postponed. Yigong's heart skipped a beat. Clan leader. Digression, November Fringe Event Winners List, 1. Star of Monthly Votes, Bei Xiaodao, 27, Star of Commentary, Chu Changshinemo Lure 2. QQ Reading Star of Recommendation, Monody, 196, Star of Commentary, Lu Guiyin Bei contact Feiyue as soon as possible tomorrow at 12 p.m. Mobile users please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1582. The ancestral worshipping ceremony was held once every 100 years. It was one of the most important events for the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. How could he dare to delay the ancestral worshipping ceremony because of him? Don't worry, clan leader. I've already made the necessary preparations. I won't delay the ceremony. Elder Yigong's voice trembled as he spoke. Although he held a high position in the clan and held great power, there were some things that even he did not dare to cross. Yi Zhao glanced at him. You also know that there is no room for mistakes during the ancestral worshipping ceremony. Everything has to be done with extreme caution. You have been staying at Phoenix Mountain for the past few days, right? It is inevitable that you will be distracted. Delaying the time is better than making any mistakes when the time comes. Many gazes were directed at them. Elder Yi Gong's face turned green and white. He was extremely embarrassed. Yi Zhao's words were not without reason, but in front of so many people, he really did not give him any face at all. Furthermore, he had been the great elder for so many years. It was not the first time he had to prepare for the ancestral worshipping ceremony. Nothing had ever happened before. Why would he suddenly die just because he stayed in Phoenix Valley for 2 more days? A thought flashed through his mind as he glanced at Yi Zhao. Suddenly, he became suspicious. Why did it feel like the clan leader wanted to delay the ancestral worshipping ceremony? Elder Yi Gong retracted his gaze, calmed himself down, and said word by word, "That's right. Don't worry, clan leader. I will personally supervise in the coming days to ensure that nothing goes wrong. If anything happens, I am willing to bear all the responsibility." This was a bit like a military order. Yi Zhao raised his eyebrows slightly. "Since you have said so, I will believe you this time." Elder Yi Gong was stunned. Why, did he not say that he was delaying and agreed directly? He quickly looked up. Unfortunately, he could not see anything from Yi Zhao's face. He could only suppress his suspicions. "All right. Go and prepare." Yi Zhao waved his hand. Elder Yi Gong bowed his head and replied, "Yes." Yuntian Tower. In the ethereal hall, it was dead silent. Rong Xiu's question made Elder Yu Jingzuan panic. In just a short while, his back was drenched in sweat. His clothes were stuck to his body, and it was sticky and cold. It was extremely uncomfortable. It's because, Elder Yu Jing hesitated, but he could not find a reason. He felt that Rong Xiu's gaze was as sharp and cold as an ice blade when it landed on him. Right at this moment, a low and deep voice suddenly sounded. When something happened to the patriarch, the first person to go in was Yu Jing. Wasn't it normal for the patriarch to have his aura on him? The elder Tong Chuan. Hearing this, Elder Yu Jing's train of thought was suddenly broadened. He sat bolt upright. Yes. Yes. At that time, I had some matters to discuss with the patriarch, but after knocking on the door for a long time, there was no response. I was worried, so I barged into the clan leader's room. When I entered, I saw that the clan leader was unconscious, so I took his pulse and injected a surge of origin energy into him. That's all. He averted his eyes. It slipped my mind that there was such a matter. No one knew whether he had really forgotten about it or not. It was up to Rong Xiu whether he believed it or not. Is that so? Sitting at the head of the table, he tapped his hand lightly on the armrest. His eyes were deep and unfathomable, making it impossible to tell what he was thinking. Elder Tong Chuan raised his eyebrows. Elder Yu Jing has always been close to the clan leader. When he saw that something happened to the clan leader, he couldn't help but worry about him. Actually, I do have some thoughts about why the clan leader suddenly fell unconscious. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. Elder Tong Chuan's face suddenly revealed a hint of worry, and he sighed deeply. Actually, this old man thought that the clan leader had suffered a blow in Fang province and was in a bad mood. That was why he locked himself in the house and refused to see anyone after returning. Since your highness has already checked the clan leader's condition, you should know that there are no injuries inside or outside his body. Perhaps, it has something to do with his mood. There was silence. The incident in Fang province that day had already spread like wildfire, and almost the entire Divine Ruins world knew about it. The clan leader of Yuntian Tower, Bailey June, had brought Jiang Jiwan with him since she was a child, taking care of her carefully and doting on her. Who would have thought that in the end, she wasn't his biological granddaughter? This matter had already become a joke to everyone. No one would be able to accept it, let alone Bailey June, who had always cared about his face. Elder Tong Chuan raised his eyes and looked at Rongxiu. Your Highness, don't wash your dirty linen in public. You were too impulsive that day. After the incident in Fang province, he had almost lost all his face. It would be difficult for him to appear in front of the people of the Divine Ruins world in the future. If he could come back and talk about it in private, the clan leader might not be like this. Rongxiu smiled with a lazy expression. Elder Tong Chuan, do you mean, everything is I's fault? That's not what this old man meant. Elder Tong Chuan said. This old man just feels that there should be a better way to deal with the incident that day. Clan leader knew that Lingxiao College was in a lot of trouble, but he still brought Jiang Jiwan there. Moreover, after Jiang Jiwan's many crimes were exposed, he was still very biased towards her. I didn't want to get involved in all these things at that time, but the clan leader only cared about Jiang Jiwan, so I couldn't persuade him no matter what. In the end, things developed to that point, and I didn't want to see it. Rongxiu interrupted him and looked at him with a smile. However, there was coldness at the corner of his eyes. Could it be that Elder Tong Chuan thinks that I want to lose face in front of all the experts of the Divine Ruins world? Elder Tong Chuan choked. Of course, he couldn't admit it. But, if it wasn't premeditated, why would Rongxiu arrange for someone to replace Jiang Hitian and take the Jiang family under his command? He had clearly planned it all out. Elder Tong Chuan even felt that Rongxiu had known about the matter between Bailey Jun and Jiang Jiwan long ago. As for losing face, at most, Rongxiu would lose face, but the one who really lost face was still Bailey Jun. Rongxiu looked around. Did you all come with the same idea this time? His voice was very soft and faint, but it weighed heavily on everyone's heart like a heavy stone. Elder Tong Chuan hurriedly explained. Your Highness, you misunderstand. This old man just felt that the incident might have caused too much of a blow to the clan leader, so... Of course, there might be other possibilities. Of course there are other possibilities. Rongxiu said lightly. The clan leader has just broken through and his strength has increased greatly. Even if he is depressed, he shouldn't be like this. Instead of investigating, you are all here waiting to question I. His thin scarlet lips curled up slightly. You guys are getting bolder and bolder. Love Network has a better reading experience. Chapter 1583. Looks like this Shangguan Yu is not only brave, but also capable. Fenghuang Valley. Elder Yu looked at the ball of bright light in the distance and could not help but click his tongue. It had been a total of 13 days since she triggered the heavenly lightning. Everything was the same as before, and there was no sign of it stopping. Every day, every night, every moment, the scene in Fenghuang Valley was the same. He was getting tired of looking at it. At first, he was quite interested in counting how many heavenly lightning bolts had gathered. But he gave up soon after. Because he realized that it was impossible to count. Those Tianlei seemed to be free as they struck down one after another. Lightning flashed, and it was blinding. How could he count them? It has been so long, why is there still no sign of it? Elder Yu knew that Shangguan Yu had summoned so many Tianlei not to refine the divine artifact, but to help Dumpling break through. Unfortunately, until now, there were still no signs of it happening. But there was not much time left. Elder Yu squinted his eyes and suddenly turned around to look at the Phoenix Shrine in the distance. The ancestral worship ceremony was getting closer and closer, and the entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan was getting busy. He did not know if he could make it in time. Chu Luiyue was also at a loss. She sat cross-legged on the star stone and raised her head slightly. She looked at Dumpling, who was still busy in mid-air, with mixed feelings. Logically speaking, it should be over, it had been so long, but Dumpling did not show any signs of breaking through to the Meridian Opening realm. Instead, it seemed to be getting hungrier as it ate. The only change was that there were many flashing silver lightning bolts on its body, which occasionally swam through its feathers. The aura on its body was still rising at first, but since 3 days ago, it had stagnated. Seeing that Tuanzi had once again devoured all the lightning bolts that landed, Chu Luiyue turned around and glanced at the bangle that was suspended in midair. With Dumpling around, it would be quite difficult to complete the refinement process. Chu Luiyue rubbed his forehead. Dumpling had devoured quite a bit of Tianlei's power in the eye of the 10,000 wine spring. But at that time, in order to stimulate the bloodline in its body, it broke through from the red-tailed red phoenix to the ancient divine beast crimson gold heavenly phoenix. It was understandable. But what was going on now? Its small body was almost like a bottomless pit. None of the Tianlei that had fallen had returned. After thinking for a long time, Chu Luiyue finally couldn't help but ask, "Dumpling, when do you plan to break through?" Dumpling was stunned. She lowered her head and looked at her. Just as she was about to say something, there was a loud explosion in the sky. A few more Tianlei bolts flew down again. Dumpling's eyes lit up. She didn't have time to say anything to Chu Luiyue and hurriedly went to greet him. Crackle. Crunch. Looking at Dumpling devouring the Tianlei with great proficiency, the corner of Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched fiercely. Then, she accepted her fate and swallowed the rest of her words. Fine. There were some things that really didn't need to be asked anymore. Beside the vast and boundless sea, Shengguan Jing stood with his hands behind his back and looked ahead with a solemn expression. So much time had passed, but still hadn't returned. He didn't know what the situation inside was like. The more he waited, the more uneasy he felt. At this moment, a reddish gold light suddenly rushed out from under the sea surface. It went straight to the sky. Bang! That ball of hot flame drew an extremely brilliant arc in the sky, and then suddenly exploded. Countless sparks bloomed. It was noon. The sky was clear and the sun was shining brightly. But the sparks were still bright. In the end, it formed a huge pattern of a crimson gold heavenly phoenix spreading its wings in the sky. Shengguan Jing's heart tightened. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something, and a trace of shock flashed past his eyes. Could it be that the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan's ancestral worship ceremony had begun? He had never been to the Divine Phoenix Mountain. Even when he was unhindered in the Divine Ruins world 1,000 years ago, he had never come into contact with the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. In the eyes of the world, the two great ancient divine beasts were extremely mysterious. However, there were many legends about their ancestral worship ceremony. It was rumored that their ancestral worship ceremony was only held once every 100 years. It was very grand and had a profound meaning. Shengguan Jing looked over again. In the sky, the pattern of the crimson gold heavenly phoenix formed by the blooming flames didn't dissipate. Instead, it seemed to be fixed. Every single spark was burning passionately and emitting a dazzling light. It was really bright and dazzling. Shengguan Jing couldn't help but feel even more uneasy. How important was the ancestral worship ceremony? The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan had always hated the human race. Logically speaking, it was impossible for them to let continue to stay there. Why hadn't she come out yet? Right at this moment, a melodious and loud cry came from afar. In an instant, it almost spread throughout the entire sea. Shengguan Jing's heart trembled, and he almost couldn't stand still. Immediately after, he saw a layer of ice rapidly spreading above the sea in front of him. Transparent ice covered the sea surface. At a glance, the crimson gold light could be faintly seen. It was exactly the same as the ice bridge that appeared that day. However, this time, the layer of ice had extended from the narrow ice bridge to the entire surface of the sea. In just a short while, more than half of the sea in front of Shangguanjing was already frozen. At a glance, it was cold and clear. However, below it, there were crimson gold flames that burned silently. Solemn and sacred, silent and silent. In the square in front of the Phoenix Shrine, the members of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan were divided into two sides. Each of them was anxiously and expectantly waiting for the ancestral worship ceremony to begin. At this moment, the clan leader and the 5 elders were still in the Phoenix Shrine and hadn't come out. Everyone's mood wasn't as tense as before. They were discussing something in low voices. After waiting for so long, it's finally here. Hee, this is my first time participating in the ancestral worship ceremony. Me too. There's going to be a talent test during the ceremony. I don't know if I can get a good result. Actually, I'm not worried about the talent test. After all, everyone more or less knows their own standards. It's just that, after the test, there's still a competition. I'm afraid it'll be difficult to win beautifully. The one with the most confidence should be Yi Ran, right? I heard that this time, he's aiming for the position of young master. Hasn't he always considered himself as the #1 person in the younger generation? But since he has this ability, it's not up to us to say anything. Why isn't he here yet? Hearing this, many people looked around. Indeed, they didn't see Yi Ran's figure. Strange. He's always the most active on such occasions. Why is he so late today? Let's not talk about him. It's almost time. The clan leader and the rest haven't come out yet. Inside the Phoenix Shrine, Yi Zhao and the 5 elders stood. Elder Yi Gong raised his eyes. Clan leader, it's time. We should go out. Digression, my hands are frozen, so I'm writing very slowly. My friends who have won a prize should quickly join the group and look for February to get the rewards. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1584. Yi Zhao nodded and took the lead to walk outside. The black gilded door opened automatically. Bright sunlight shone in. Yi Zhao lifted his chin slightly and looked outside. From here to the plaza, one needed to walk down 9 flights of stairs. Thus, standing here, one could easily overlook the entire plaza. When the door opened and a few figures appeared, the originally lively plaza instantly quieted down. All eyes were focused on them. Then, everyone bowed in unison. Welcome, clan leader. Many figures on both sides bowed in unison. Although there were not many people, those who were able to come here were the most outstanding of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Just by standing there, he was able to produce an imperceptibly strong pressure. Yi Zhao calmly raised his eyes and looked in the direction of Fenghuang Valley. Dark clouds gathered, and Tianlei rumbled. Clearly, the commotion over there had not stopped. No one knew if it would end in a short period of time. Yi Zhao quickly retracted his gaze and waved his hand. A majestic aura quickly spread out. Rise. Only then did everyone stand up. Yi Zhao looked around. When he saw the group of youngsters standing together, he paused for a moment. Sensing that the patriarch was looking at them, the young children all unconsciously became nervous. Among them, many were participating in the ancestral worship ceremony for the first time. It was also their first time coming to the plaza in front of the shrine of the Phoenix. It was normal for them to be nervous. Fortunately, Yi Zhao quickly retracted his gaze, which lessened the invisible pressure on them. Yi Zhao's deep and distant voice spread out mightily and clearly landed in everyone's ears. Today's ancestral worship ceremony is a grand occasion for the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan for 100 years. This time, other than paying respects to our ancestors and testing the new generation, there is also an extremely important matter, the selection of our clan's young clan leader. I have inherited the position of clan leader for more than 1,000 years. Today, it is time to select our young clan leader, who will be the next clan leader. Once these words were spoken, many people's expressions became faintly excited. In fact, they already knew about this before, but now that they heard it personally, they couldn't help but feel a surge of emotion. For the entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, this matter was of great significance. Even though most people knew that they didn't have the qualifications to run, they were still filled with curiosity and excitement. Being able to witness the young master's selection with her own eyes was also a blessing. The first item of the ancestral worship ceremony, bloodline talent test. Yi Zhao raised his hand and was about to point at Iran. However, after looking for a while, he did not see that familiar figure. He could not help but frown. He had taken a rough look earlier and thought that Iran was at the back. Only now did he realize that Iran had not arrived at all. This short pause immediately attracted the attention of everyone present. Many people looked at each other. According to the rules, the first person to be tested in the ancestral worship ceremony was usually the most outstanding of the younger generation. This could be considered a good start. In their generation, Iran should be the first to go up. But he wasn't here yet. Seeing this, Elder Yi Gong hurriedly took half a step forward and explained in a low voice. Clan leader, a few days ago, Iran told me that he had recently comprehended a lot and had faint signs of a breakthrough. During this period, he has been in seclusion. Maybe he hasn't come out yet. It was not a small mistake to be late to the ancestral worship ceremony. But if it was for cultivation, it was understandable. Yi Zhao's expression eased a little. Iran has always known his limits. If it wasn't for special circumstances, I believe he wouldn't be like this. It seems that there is hope for a breakthrough this time. Elder Yi Gong hurriedly said. Thank you for your auspicious words, clan leader. It's just that he hasn't successfully broken through yet. As his master, I don't dare to say anything. Yi Zhao smiled. He is very talented. Everything will go smoothly. In fact, his strength is already outstanding. If he can successfully break through this time, he will be even more powerful. Elder Yi Gong lowered his head humbly. He is young and impetuous. There are still many things to learn. Although he seemed humble, there was a faint arrogance between his brows. Anyone with a discerning eye could see it clearly. Yi Zhao didn't mind. In recent years, Iran had indeed performed well. It was no wonder that Yi Gong was proud of him. Moreover, Iran had already opened 3 meridians. If he could really break through this time, he would have opened 4 meridians. Among the younger generation, there was no one who had reached this level. Yi Zhao raised his hand and pointed at a young man beside him. Yi Axian, let's start with you. The young man who was called out was a little surprised, but he quickly reacted. Yes. With that, he walked straight forward and stopped when he reached the center of the square. This place was engraved with the totem of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. They were relying on this totem to conduct the test. Yi Axian stood on the totem and looked down. Then, he took a deep breath and calmed himself down. He was considered one of the most outstanding in the clan. Apart from Iran, he was basically the only one left. Yi Axian and Iran were about the same age, but in comparison, his personality was much calmer and he usually kept a low profile. Apart from cultivation, he rarely interfered with the matters of the clan. In this aspect, he was the complete opposite of Iran. Everyone's gazes turned to him. Although it was not Iran who started, Yi Axian's talent and strength were not bad. Let's begin. Yi Zhao ordered. Yi Axian nodded and then closed his eyes. In the next moment, a scarlet gold flame suddenly surged out of his body. The flame instantly surrounded him, and the blazing heat caused the surrounding air to instantly heat up. Buzz! A strange buzzing sound suddenly came from under his feet. Then, the totem seemed to be ignited and gradually brightened. A warm and majestic light slowly emerged from under the totem. Everyone watched with rapt attention. Some did not even dare to blink, afraid that they would miss something. The totem of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan had a rather special shape. It was like a ball of flame, but also like a phoenix that was about to spread its wings and soar. There were 9 lines at the end of its tail, like flames that had separated, but also like the tail of a phoenix. At this moment, as the flames on Enchanting's body burned, the 9 lines were lit up one by one. The first line. The second line. The third line. When the third line of flame lit up, everyone subconsciously held their breaths. Lighting up 3 lines meant that he had opened 3 meridians. 3 meridians were not rare. The key was whether he could continue. What was surprising was that the flames on Enchanting's body did not extinguish immediately. On the 4th line, specks of scarlet gold finally appeared. Hiss, he's going to light up the 4th line. Is that true? Only those who have opened 4 meridians can do that, right? I've never heard of Enchanting having a breakthrough before. He's been living in seclusion, focusing on cultivation and keeping a low profile. Maybe he really can light up the 4th line. Digression, after changing to a new platform, I'm still not used to it. Ha 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 ha, I can't find a place to talk about this after searching for a long time. Chapter 1585. The expressions of Yi Zhao and the rest also changed slightly, and their eyes were clearly much more serious than before. Only Elder Yi Gong's brows quickly furrowed. Enchanting had broken through. Why didn't he know? No matter how low-key he was, this kind of thing couldn't be hidden, right? If this was true, then, the competition for the young master's position would probably be much more intense. Poof. A small cluster of flames suddenly exploded and was annihilated. The 4th line on the totem was ultimately not ignited. The surroundings immediately quieted down, and everyone had different expressions. Yi Zhao and the rest were disappointed, but Elder Yi Gong secretly heaved a sigh of relief. On the other hand, Enchanting's expression was normal, and only a faint trace of regret appeared on his young face, but it quickly dissipated. It seemed that he had expected this. He raised his head. Enchanting is useless, and has disappointed the patriarch and elders. Yi Zhao had always been serious, but at this moment, he revealed a rare smile. Don't blame yourself. Although you haven't successfully opened the 4th meridian, it should be soon, right? Enchanting nodded, seeming a little embarrassed. Actually, I've been here for a long time, and recently, I've finally found a way, but my talent is limited, and I haven't completely comprehended and broken through. This is already very rare. As Yi Zhao spoke, he glanced at Elder Yi Shang beside him. Yi Shang, Enchanting is your disciple, why didn't you guide him properly? Elder Yi Shang said with a smile. I can help him for a while, but I can't help him forever. He's only opened the 4th meridian now. If he can't even comprehend this by himself, wouldn't it be even more difficult in the future? In the end, cultivation depends on oneself. As soon as these words were said, many people subconsciously looked at Elder Yi Gong. As expected, his face darkened a little. Everyone knew that Yi Ran had been cultivating with Elder Yi Gong recently, and probably received a lot of guidance. Wasn't Elder Yi Shang secretly slapping them in the face by saying this? Moreover, Enchanting has a steady personality and can endure. I believe that in time, he will definitely succeed. Yi Zhao nodded in agreement. He could tell that Enchanting was indeed only a step away from leaving the 4 branches. If the ancestral worship ceremony was delayed for a while longer, it might even cause Yi Ran a lot of trouble. Go back and cultivate well. Yi Zhao gave a few more instructions before letting Yi Xian go back. Next, when they saw that Yi Xian had only opened 3 meridians, the people behind him all let out sighs of relief. Although they couldn't compare to the top few, they didn't want to be left too far behind. Fortunately, Yi Xian's results did not make them feel too uncomfortable. The tests were carried out one after another. Elder Yi Gong watched from above. Seeing that no one had opened 4 meridians, his mood improved. Those who had opened 3 meridians naturally had different levels of talent and strength. But no matter what, it was still a far cry from someone who had opened 4 meridians. Now, he could only hope that Yi Ran would be able to successfully break through. Time passed slowly. On the square, everyone carried out the test in an orderly manner. Everything proceeded smoothly and calmly. Those who could come here had already transformed into human form. In other words, they had at least opened 3 meridians. But because these crimson gold heavenly phoenixes were very young, most of them had yet to open 4 meridians. More than 20 of them had already been tested. As expected, none of them had opened 4 meridians. Yi Zhao couldn't help but look in the direction of Fenghuang Valley. His eyes were deep. However, Elder Yi Gong gradually became anxious. Because more than half of the tests were over, but Yi Ran had yet to arrive. In fact, there wasn't even any movement. Previously, he had repeatedly reminded him not to miss the ancestral worship ceremony. If he didn't make it, it would be useless even if he successfully opened 4 meridians. It was already so late. Yi Ran should be here, Elder Yi Gong frowned. Could it be that he encountered some trouble during his breakthrough? First Elder, the children are almost done with their tests. Is Yi Ran still coming? Elder Yi Yu asked in a curious manner. If he's any later, he won't be able to make it. Elder Yi Gong was already frustrated. Hearing this, he became even more frustrated. He'll naturally come. Elder Yi Yu's eyes darted around as he smiled. Why don't you go and take a look yourself? No matter what, it's always better to take a look, isn't it? Yi Ran has always been hardworking. We don't want to see him delay time and affect the important matters. What do you think? Although Elder Yi Gong didn't like him, he was a little tempted when he heard this. This was a serious matter. It was always better to be careful. He looked at Yi Zhao hesitantly. Yi Zhao nodded. Elder Yi Gong heaved a sigh of relief. Thank you, Patriarch. I'll go soon. With that, he moved and headed in the direction of Fenghuang Valley. However, at this moment, a rumbling sound suddenly came from afar. Elder Yi Gong was shocked and immediately focused his gaze. Everyone in the square also turned their heads. In the distance, a figure suddenly rushed out from the shadows of the mountains. His body was burning with crimson gold flames, and his aura was shocking. The surrounding heaven and earth energy also began to surge towards him rapidly. Elder Yi Gong was delighted. Yi Ran. It looked like he was finally going to break through. As if to verify his guess, the flames on Yi Ran's body quickly gathered and condensed into the shape of a long feather in front of him. The feather moved slowly. There were already 3 crimson gold lines between Yi Ran's brows, shining brightly. Following the movement of the feather, the 4th line was slowly forming. Elder Yi Gong was ecstatic. However, just as the 4th line was about to be completed, a loud sound came from the depths of Fenghuang Valley. In an instant, crimson gold flames splashed everywhere, and heaven and earth shook. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1586. The feather in front of Yi Ran seemed to be affected and started to sway. The remaining half of the vein was not completed. This made Yi Ran anxious. But this was a critical moment, and he did not dare to move. He could only stare at the feather in front of him and pray in his heart. It must be fine. It must be successful. No matter what happened over there, his fourth meridian must be opened. Because of his nervousness, his body started to tremble. Unfortunately, things did not go as he wished. Before he had time to think further, he suddenly felt a terrifying berserk energy surging towards him from behind. At the same time, an indescribably strong pressure descended. The feather in front of Rand swayed even more violently. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, the remaining Tian lei in the sky finally came crashing down. All of them landed in the depths of Fenghuang Valley. At this moment, the sky changed color, as if doomsday had arrived. Rand's eyes widened, the feather in front of him suddenly changed direction and flew in that direction. No! Before Rand could finish his sentence, his body shook violently, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Ran. The expression of Elder Gong, who had been observing the situation, changed, and he immediately rushed over. He was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, he was already in front of Fenghuang Valley. But when he arrived, he realized that the entire Fenghuang Valley was covered by that terrifying energy. It was very difficult for outsiders to enter. His speed was greatly reduced, as if he was walking in a swamp, and it was difficult for him to move forward. Luckily, Rand's position was not far from the exit of Fenghuang Valley, and Elder Gong did not spend too much time to reach him. Elder Gong's heart sank when he saw Rand's current state. His face and body were covered in blood. His complexion was exceptionally pale, and his eyes were dim. His aura also seemed to have withered significantly. It was obvious that the previous attack had a huge impact on him. Actually, this was normal. Rand was already on the verge of breaking through, and it was a time when he could not be disturbed. But such an accident happened, and it could be considered as forcefully interrupting his breakthrough. He was unprepared, and naturally, he was in a mess. But what worried Elder Gong even more was that there were only 3 veins left between Rand's eyebrows. The fourth one that he had painstakingly drawn was only half completed before it was abruptly stopped. Rand suffered from the backlash, and the remaining half of the veins had already dissipated. The sudden loss of the feather's support was a huge blow to him. At this moment, he was filled with anger and resentment, so the situation was naturally even worse. Moss. Master. Rand's mouth was full of blood. When he saw Elder Gong, he spoke with great difficulty. His voice was extremely weak, and in the midst of the continuous explosions in Fenghuang Valley, it was exceptionally pale. Elder Gong couldn't care less. He quickly took action and brought Rand out. Rand looked back, unwilling to give up. That ball of fire was burning fiercely in the air. Countless bolts of heavenly lightning struck the surface. Vaguely, there seemed to be a figure within. Right at this moment, the reddish-golden feather had already flown over. It hovered in mid-air, swaying gently in front of the burning reddish-gold flame. Rand's eyes widened. His eyes were bloodshot. It was it. It was the crimson gold sky phoenix that had returned. It had snatched his meridian opening opportunity. That reddish-gold feather had been left behind by the crimson gold sky phoenix clan's ancestor, and there was only one of it in the world. All crimson gold sky phoenixes needed this feather to open their meridians. Everything had been fine on his side, and the fourth meridian was about to open. Who would have thought that a troublemaker would come out of nowhere and interrupt his breakthrough process without saying a word? He even snatched the feather away by force. Rand was filled with anger, and it burned fiercely. Looking at the fluttering feather and the blinding flame in the distance, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He struggled to go back. Elder Gong noticed his actions, and his brows furrowed even more. Rand. What are you doing? Iran continued to stare in that direction. His voice was hoarse and filled with deep resentment. Master. It's too much. Elder Igong noticed that something was wrong with his expression and turned back to look. However, when he saw it, his expression changed as well. Apart from shock and anger, he was also in disbelief. He had also stayed in the position of head elder for many years. What kind of great winds and waves had he not seen before? But the situation before him was too strange. The figure in the flame was obviously the crimson gold sky phoenix that had just returned. It had snatched Iran's meridian opening opportunity. Actually, in the crimson gold sky phoenix clan, because there was only one ancestor feather that could open meridians, it was inevitable that there would be fights over it. Under normal circumstances, the stronger one was, the higher the chance of success. That was normal. But the situation before him, that crimson gold sky phoenix had yet to transform into human form. How did it win against Iran? While Elder Igong was in a daze, a gust of wind suddenly swept through Fenghuang Valley. He was caught off guard and was flung away by this terrifying force. Iran's body flew out uncontrollably as well. At that moment, the feather finally drew a line. It was as smooth as flowing water, free and easy. Everyone widened their eyes in shock. That crimson gold sky phoenix had opened its meridians. Digression: when uploading the 5th update, I accidentally deleted it all. After searching for a while, I couldn't find a single word. I had to rewrite everything. An author cursed as he shut down his writing software and kicked away his broken laptop. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1587. How? Elder Igong widened his eyes in disbelief. Didn't the crimson gold heavenly phoenix just break through not long ago? Why is it opening meridians now? Furthermore, it caused such a huge commotion. Iran felt as if all his strength had been sucked out of him when he saw that stroke of the brush. His legs turned to jelly, and he almost fell to the ground. Elder Igong was shocked and hurriedly pulled him up. However, Iran's eyes were dim. He stared at the ball of flame and could not help but laugh at himself. He had worked so hard to summon that feather and open meridians. Who knew that he would be killed halfway? He knew that after today's failure, it would be even harder for him to open meridians. Master. I've disappointed you, Iran muttered and spat out another mouthful of blood. He was filled with anger and had nowhere to vent it. His chest was about to explode. There were too many things he wanted to say, but he did not know where to start. You must help me. Before Iran could finish his sentence, his eyes rolled back and he fainted. Iran. Seeing this, Elder Igong became even more anxious and furious. The violent energy in Fenghuang Valley was still sweeping over. He could not stay here any longer. Elder Igong looked back deeply, then gritted his teeth and left. Elder Igong brought the unconscious Iran back to the square in front of Fenghuang Shrine. Seeing them return, everyone kept quiet, but their gazes landed on Iran. His face was pale, and the corners of his mouth and chest were stained with blood. His breathing was weak. He looked like he had never been in such a sorry state before. Many people looked at each other with complicated expressions. Who would have thought that this would happen? Clan leader. Please, you must seek justice for Iran. As soon as Elder Igong arrived, he spoke with great anger. That Shengguanyu and that crimson gold heavenly phoenix are too much. They've made up their minds to take Iran's life. Yi Zhao walked over with a frown. He bent down to check on Iran's condition, then heaved a sigh of relief. Don't worry, he only suffered a backlash from a portion of his power. At the same time, his anger attacked his heart, causing him to fall unconscious. His life is not in danger. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and placed his broad palm on Iran's forehead. A bright ray of light seemed to surge out of his palm and quickly flowed into Iran's body. His originally pale face began to recover at a speed visible to the naked eye. After a while, he withdrew his hand. Iran's eyebrows twitched, then he slowly woke up. His eyes were still a little dazed. "Master." His voice was weak and hoarse, but he was finally awake. Yi Zhao said, "Fortunately, there aren't any major problems. I'll be able to recover after a few days of rest." Elder Yi Gong was still in a daze. He didn't expect Yi Zhao to act so decisively, and Iran actually woke up just like that. This, Yi Zhao glanced at him and said indifferently, "The ancestor's golden feather is our tribe's sacred item. It won't take the lives of our tribesmen. Yi Gong, as the great elder, shouldn't you know this best? Why did you say those words and make everyone nervous?" Elder Yi Gong was momentarily at a loss for words, then he clenched his teeth. "Clan leader, I'm not saying that there's a problem with the ancestor's golden feather. It's Sheng Guanyu and the others." Iran was at a crucial point in his breakthrough and couldn't be disturbed. But they just had to snatch the ancestor's golden feather away at this moment. This is clearly intentional. He pointed at the depths of Fenghuang Valley, at the ball of fire that was burning fiercely. If they didn't use any underhanded methods, how could the ancestor's golden feather be forcefully snatched away while Iran was opening his meridians? Even if Iran's current injury wasn't fatal, the key point was that it caused his meridian opening to fail. Today was the ancestral worship ceremony. Without opening his fourth meridian, how was he different from others? How could he fight for the position of young master? Needless to say, he was injured now. This was the greatest loss. When Elder Yi Gong thought about how his years of hard work had gone to waste, he almost went crazy with anger. Clan leader. They conspired against the law and should be killed. Because of his agitation, Elder Yi Gong's voice was very sharp. Everyone in the square heard him clearly. Yi Zhao's eyes were cold. Elder Yi Yu was the first to speak. "Great Elder, aren't your words a little biased? I feel that this is just a coincidence." Iran wanted to open his meridians and summon the ancestor's golden feather. But at this time, Dumpling also wanted to open her meridians. It was purely an accident, an accident. Elder Yi Gong laughed coldly. "An accident? Yu, you've been in the clan for so many years. It's not like you haven't seen people opening their meridians at the same time, right? But when have you ever seen someone snatch the ancestor's golden feather halfway? Under normal circumstances, this matter was based on first come, first served. Now that someone had snatched it from them, they still had to swallow their anger. Impossible. This Great Elder means that Sheng Guanyu and Dumpling have already reached the stage where they can control the ancestor's golden feather at will." Elder Yi Yu blinked his eyes. Elder Yi Gong suddenly choked. The expression on his face froze for a moment before he hurriedly said, "That's right. You, what nonsense are you talking about? When have I ever said such a thing? The ancestor's golden feather was considered a supreme existence in the clan. How could he dare to speak rudely? But what you said just now. Wasn't that what you meant?" Elder Yi Yu raised his chin. "Yes, everyone saw it just now. It was the ancestor's golden feather that went to Dumpling's side. Moreover, it did open Dumpling's meridians just now. When it drew that line, everyone saw it clearly." Elder Yi Gong's chest seemed to be surging wildly, almost driving him crazy. Even if it wants to open its meridians, it has to wait until Iran is done. What's going on now? So brazen. Really too arrogant. Elder EU also laughed. Actually, this matter is not easy to say. Under normal circumstances, it is indeed according to the order of meridian's opening. But Grand Elder seems to have forgotten that there is a prerequisite: the strong are respected. If they are both opening their meridians, naturally, the one with a higher level will have the advantage. After Elder E Gong heard this, he was stunned for a moment. After a moment, he finally reacted and almost laughed out of anger. EU, your words are too laughable. You have to know that Iran is about to open his fourth meridian. And that crimson gold heavenly phoenix is only at the second meridian. Isn't it obvious who's better and who's worse? You said that it can beat Iran. Isn't it too laughable? Elder EU rubbed his chin and didn't seem to care about his words. He smiled and said, yes. Tell me, what's the reason why a second meridian can beat a fourth meridian? The expression on Elder E Gong's face suddenly froze. Yi Zhao said calmly, contacting the meridian opener can take the ancestor's golden feather. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1588. The surroundings suddenly quieted down. Elder E Gong opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Continuous meridians opening. To many in the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, this was just a legend. After the creation of the world, two ancient divine beasts were born in the chaos. Tens of thousands of years had passed since then. And in this long period of time, the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan continued to multiply, and their numbers were not small. But among them, those who could continuously open meridians could be counted on one hand. Crimson Gold Sky Phoenixes were born with one meridian. After 100 years, they could open a second meridian. After 100 years, they could try to open a third meridian and transform into a human. Success was not guaranteed. Those who were more talented would be able to do it when they were a little over 100 years old. But there were also those with average talent who were still outside the door of the third meridian at 200 or 300 years old. And after opening 3 meridians, it was even more difficult to advance. This was basically the time to completely rely on one's talent. Those with outstanding talent could break through smoothly. Those who opened the 6th meridian would be promoted to elder. And those who could open the 7th meridian would be the clan leader. This was also why they had to pick the one with the best talent when selecting the young master. Only with power could one have the right to speak. If they could not even control the situation, what else could they say? Continuous meridians opening. Amidst the dead silence, Yi Ran was the first to react. He looked up at Fenghuang Valley again. The ball of flame was still burning, and the figure inside could not be seen clearly. But the ancestor's golden feather had not disappeared. It was still floating in the air, as if waiting for a second stroke. How is this possible? Iran murmured. His eyes were filled with disbelief. However, his heart had already completely sunk. He had been in a fit of anger and did not have time to think so much. But now that he had calmed down, he realized that things might be as Yi Zhao and the others had said. That Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix was really going to open meridians continuously. Otherwise, how could it have so easily snatched the ancestor's golden feather from him? After opening meridians, the ancestor's golden feather would automatically disappear until the next summoning. But now, it was still there, perfectly fine. If it wasn't to continue opening meridians, then what was it? Iran couldn't accept it. His heart felt like it was being crushed by something, and he found it hard to breathe. Preposterous. How laughable. That crimson gold heavenly phoenix had only broken through a few months ago. Now that it had returned to the clan, it was going to open its meridians consecutively. Iran suddenly recalled what his master had said to him before. At that time, he had said that the crimson gold heavenly phoenix might become a threat to him. At that time, he didn't think much of it. But now, he finally knew where his master's grave expression came from. At this moment, Elder Ishang raised his chin and said softly, "That's right. Look, the ancestral golden feather is moving." Hearing this, everyone subconsciously looked over. Sure enough, they saw that the reddish gold feather was slowly drawing a second line. The square was completely silent. Shock, nervousness, suspicion, lamentation, envy, everyone had different expressions on their faces. It was obvious that they were feeling very complicated at this moment. Actually, if it was someone else from the clan, they might not have such a big reaction. But it just had to be that crimson gold heavenly phoenix that had just returned from outside. Didn't they say that it had only broken through a few months ago? Didn't they say that it was a lowly 9-colored heavenly pheasant in the past? More importantly, until now, it hadn't even broken its contract with that human. They had always looked down on the human race and rarely interacted with them. They even viewed the contract with a human as a huge stain. But who knew that this crimson gold heavenly phoenix that they secretly looked down on and contracted with a human would actually win against all of them? One had to know that even clan leader Yi Zhao hadn't opened his meridians consecutively. How could they not be shocked by this scene? "Clan leader, looks like you're going to lose the bet this time." Elder Yi Yu shrugged his shoulders. However, there was a smile on his face. "After so many years, this is the first time you've lost, right? And to a human." Yi Zhao put his hands behind his back and looked into the distance with a heavy gaze. There seemed to be waves surging in his eyes. He didn't say anything, but there was no anger on his face. It seemed that he had silently agreed. In fact, although he looked calm and indifferent on the surface, he was actually shocked at this moment. When he proposed the bet, he didn't think much about it. In his opinion, the possibility of Shanghai Yu being able to help Dumpling transform into a human within a month was almost zero. As long as she failed, the contract would have to be broken. This way, it would save both parties from continuing to argue. It was undeniable that because of Dumpling's pure bloodline, he actually had some extravagant hopes in the depths of his heart. But he didn't think that it would actually succeed. Until now, when he saw the ancestor's golden feather drawing another line, he finally believed that all of this had really happened. Dumpling is still very young. It's not easy for her to open 3 meridians directly. During this period, Shanghai Yu caused such a huge commotion in Tianlei. This should be the reason, right? Elder Ishang said with a smile. We have misunderstood her previously. But fortunately, Yu has been watching over her all this time, and no one has rashly disturbed her. If Dumpling fails to open her meridians because of this, we will suffer a great loss. No matter what, Dumpling was the bloodline of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. She had continuously opened her meridians and broken through. This was a joyous occasion for the entire clan. Elder Yi Gong's face turned pale. Of course, he could tell that these words were mocking him. After enduring for a while, he couldn't hold it in anymore and walked in front of Yi Zhao. Yi Zhao saw his angry expression and narrowed his eyes slightly. Yi Gong, what are you trying to do? Elder Yi Gong gritted his teeth. Clan leader, I don't want to do anything. I just want to seek justice for Iran. He suddenly raised his hand and pointed at Fenghuang Valley. I know. It can continuously open its meridians because it is capable. But you can't be biased because of this. Now, it has opened 3 meridians, but what about Iran? He could have opened his 4th meridian. There's no way you don't know how much he's sacrificed for this day. Now, just because that Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix wants to continuously open its meridians, it can do whatever it wants and cause harm to others. Moreover, although it opened its 3rd meridian today, it is still unknown whether it is good or bad for it to grow by rushing it. No one can guarantee that it can continue to open its meridians in the future. But Iran has truly lost the chance to open his fourth meridian. Clan leader, which is more important, do you know in your heart? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.